Out of the gates and ready to go. OutKick 360 is underway. Glad you're with us. Thursday edition as we broadcast live from Nashville, Music City, where we've got Thursday night football in town tonight. The Dallas Cowboys are in town, and if you didn't know it, it's packed here at 6th and Peabody with EHA Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. In for Chad Withrow, who remains in a very snowy Nebraska, guest hosting today. JP Arencibia. Good to see you, bro.
Good to see you. First, I have a question. Did you actually make that beanbag, that cornhole toss in that intro?
No.
And did Chad make his shot?
Chad made the second shot.
So he didn't make the first one?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so for those listening, we've got a video intro where it was more about trying to look like we knew what we were doing than actually pulling it off. The people outside, though, in the beer garden, they looked at us like, these guys are awful at anything athletic, which is, I mean,
you want to talk sports?
Fair. Meanwhile, I've got JP here, who's could make it in his sleep on this. Chad's dad is a ringer for cornhole. Like, this guy doesn't even touch the board. He's so good.
Johnsonville, he's going for the $1 million.
He could, and he sandbags it to the point where you think he's not good, and then he crushes you.
I have heard of people literally coming off work to work on their beanbag tosses because they want to go pro in cornhole. So, hey, anything is possible.
Ping pong was always big in the NFL locker rooms. It still is. Like one of the punishments is you'll take the ping pong table out.
Yeah.
What's big in the Major League Baseball clubhouse?
Ping pong. Ping pong is huge. That is, I would say, in a lot of clubhouses, ping pong would be the game of choice, other than cards. Cards are a good game because you can play many different games, and sometimes you can, possibly bet on the game. But
that certainly went down on the plane.
Yes, but I would say ping pong. Ping pong is, I would say, the number one.
I think so.
Game, yeah.
Hit us up on Twitter at OutKick360. We've got a jam-packed show, plenty of headlines to get to. Armando Salguero joins us in 20 minutes from OutKick.com, our NFL senior columnist. We'll hit all the big headlines across the league. The coaching firings, the changes on the horizon. We're 11 days away from Black Monday across the league, where we'll see other openings. We'll preview Thursday night football and the big Monday night matchup between Buffalo and Cincinnati. And then about an hour and 15 minutes from now, JP, one of, if not your favorite person in baseball, because every time you and I are chatting about Major League Baseball, Alex Anthopulous comes up. The Braves general manager and president will be on with us coming up in hour number 2.
Yeah, he's the gentleman who called me up. He was our general manager when I got called up to the Toronto Blue Jays. And I'll tell you what, he is, I would say, enemy number one for the Players Association because of what he's been able to do. But whatever he has a secret potion. Might be some of that old whiskey, old smoky moonshine, but he gets guys to sign, and that's what you want to do.
How would you feel if you're a Braves player seeing all the money that's been spent after signing these extensions?
I would feel great. I mean, you have to be fired up. I think the one thing is you look at it, and I think the one thing that he does very well is he says, hey, you need to play with a team that is going to win for some time. So if you give me some money back on a team-friendly deal, then we can go and get some guys. And look what he's done. Sean Murphy locked him up. I mean, everybody. I feel like everybody on that field is locked up. And then you look at the shortstop where Vaughn Grissom, he's under control for 6 years, so might as well be locked up. So the Braves are good for a long time.
They lose Dansby, but it's not when you look at what they have, it's not massive.
But again, it's funny because he's public enemy number one for the Major League Baseball Players Association because he's been able to drive down the market in a sense for some guys.
We've got Alex Anthopulous coming up in an hour and 15 minutes. This is going to be a great conversation. One big thing on every NFL game plus primary complaint in about 40 minutes, and JP's ready to go on that locked and loaded.
I've been waiting for a long time to put this complaint out in the
air. You have sat through many of primary complaint segments while waiting to come on the show. So now you're in the seat, and I'm looking forward to that. And Davey Hudson has been waiting for like 2 weeks to unveil his, which is really good. I'm ready to hear his rant coming up. Big news today out of the Big Ten. Commissioner Kevin Warren, who has crushed it for the conference, leading the conference to this massive television agreement moving forward and the $100 million payout annually for every team within the conference, every program within the conference. According to Pete Thamel, Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren has emerged as a top candidate to be the next president and CEO of the Chicago Bears. He's interviewed in person for the job, considered among the final candidates. The process expected to wrap up in the coming weeks. Thamel is saying that because it will wrap up after the season is done, but they completely overhauled their front office and coaching staff last year, and now with Kevin Warren, they're after the former Minnesota Vikings executive who was a big part of the new stadium in Minneapolis. And Chicago and the Bears, they've purchased the racetrack there where they're going to build a new stadium and leave Soldier Field.
Oh, that's sad.
Based on the agreement that they have or what they can't get done with the city. And they're going to have their own complex and own everything based on the financing involved. So they want someone that can put all that together. Kevin Warren's that guy. The Big Ten, though, is losing a huge asset. Like, he has been, in terms of conference realignment and television partnerships, he's been the alpha. Total beta during COVID. Absolute beta during COVID, where if it were up to him, we wouldn't have played a college football season. And within like a number of hour span, he went from saying that, yeah, it's probably best that we don't play to saying, wait, we need to have a 10-game season. We're going to play as many games as we possibly can, because the SEC jumped out after that and said, we're playing. We'll play a conference season. And, they made up their own rules as they went, so Ohio State could get into the Big Ten championship game that year. But the point being, Warren is a major asset for college football right now. It's him and Greg Sankey. And now, if he takes the Chicago Bears job it's Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner that's going to be running everything, despite the fact that right now the bigger payouts per year moving forward will be with the Big Ten, and there's a big drop-off. ESPN, ABC, they're going to pay more for the SEC eventually. But, JP, it's about $100 million per program, and the SEC right now is getting 60. I mean, that's nothing to laugh at, but there's a big gap there.
That's a big gap.
And what Warren did is, in the TV negotiations, he took the NFL model where every week you will have a Big Ten game on practically every network not named ESPN. So CBS, NBC will be a part of this, Fox with Big Noon Kickoff, and some of the other networks, the sports networks, CBS Sports Network or FS1. It's a really good concept because you spread everything out and you get that type of exposure from major networks.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you think about it, the Big Ten now is arguably the number two. I'm going to say number two because the SEC is number one. It will always be number one in my heart. I don't care what happens to the day I leave this earth. But you would have thought of it maybe not too long ago about maybe Big Ten being even behind the ACC, the PAC, maybe even behind the PAC, right? So all of a sudden, now that you're watching Big Ten football and you're like, there's not just Ohio State and Michigan, right? It's starting, the viewership and the following is starting to grow. So that for me is what he's been able to create there. Now getting more TV, which gets better players, which gets more recruiting.
Well, you're right. And keep this in mind, too. Like, the way they have elevated, they jumped in. The SEC did this first with Texas and Oklahoma. But then Warren went to work waiting on the Pac-12 television rights agreement to come up where they could negotiate this. They're in the final year. And he went out and got USC and UCLA and has pulled them in for 2024. So you have the West Coast now as a part of the Big Ten moving forward. And you have the biggest market other than the markets that you already currently are in within the conference. You're headed to LA now. So they've, as far as TV rights are concerned, you're in New York, you're in Chicago, they've got them all.
The country covered, and then then it becomes really SEC versus the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's really a Power 2.
There's no more Power 5.
Yeah, and some would point to Warren as the reason why we saw the major destruction of conference alignment as we know it. But it was going to happen one way or the other, and he jumped out in front and got it done. Meanwhile, you've got the Pac-12, Big 12, and ACC in many ways either handcuffed or scrambling to figure out what they're going to do after Warren came in and took USC and UCLA away.
Well, those are going to be the monopolies. I mean, you think about it, they're going to outprice everybody, and everybody wants to watch those teams because you want to watch good teams play unless you're connected to the team in some sort of fashion. But you know what I love too is this is happening in a lot of sports. College going to the pros. Being successful in college and then being able to go to the next level and go to the pros. I mean, it's happened in baseball. It's happened in football. Happens in basketball. There's a lot of now. I mean, I even saw one thing about Josh Heupel and the Browns, like connected to the Browns. And I'm thinking, what?
Well, that's Haslam.
Because of Haslam. But my point is saying is before it used to be a kind of taboo to say, oh, this is at least when I was playing, that's a college. The colleges do it differently than we do in the pros. And now it's become a thing where it's like, actually, we want to pull some people from college to enhance our pros. So you think about it, it's become a business, not just on the field for players, but also if you're a coach, you can set yourself up. You're a commissioner, you can set yourself up.
And what he's done is set the Big Ten up for the future, even if he leaves. He's got 2 teams in the college football playoff. He's got 2 cracks at the SEC with Georgia now because Ohio State and Georgia playing on Saturday. And if Michigan advances past TCU and Georgia, you've got 2 chances to knock off the team, the bar.
Yeah.
And according to Pete Thamel, Warren's not going to attend either game on Saturday, which again is a sign he's headed to the Bears. It's a great hire by the Bears. They had their team president Ted Phillips is retiring, I believe, at the end of the season, which is why they're waiting in a couple of weeks to make this announcement. But if you're interviewing Kevin Warren and he wants the job, that is a move you've got to go make for the Bears. It's a smart move for what he did with the Vikings, and I can't wait to see who the Big Ten decides to go after for his replacement.
Ooh.
Do they go back to the NFL and try to find the next executive that comes in that can negotiate all these things? Or are they looking for more of the bridge guy? Not in a bad way, but Greg Sankey comes in and he has an idea and he's thinking 3-4 steps ahead. And that's the type of guy you've got to go get in order to compete with the SEC. And can you have someone that can pair with the SEC and then run college sports as we know it? I mean, that's the next hire is huge in that regard.
Well, if you think about it, I always kind of refer to, baseball in a sense, Tampa Bay Rays. How many people go and pick the executives of Tampa Bay Rays, and we're gonna make them our GM. So if I'm the Big Ten and I have a decision to make, and the SEC is the one that sets the bar, I mean, I'm sure there might be no compete and stuff like that, but I'm going for somebody in that conference.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, it could also be a current president. Ohio State's president stepped forward and got things done within the conference during COVID. A big reason. They were thinking about going independent for a year if they couldn't play within their conference. Nebraska was too. And I think a lot of presidents and ADs and athletic departments and fans, players, love him for that. So, does the Big Ten then endorse that move?
Yeah.
Don't know. But I think the way things were handled during COVID versus the way they were handled over the last 12 months with negotiations, yin and the yang with Kevin Warren, a completely different perception on the job he's done.
Well, and I know that this is different, but I think it shows the aggressiveness of like being an individual thinker and going, you know what, I can come at me, but I have a plan in place and I'm going to do it. And those are things where when you have to be in that position as such as a commissioner, you're going to make some decisions that are maybe not a fan by everybody. Ohio State's president pushes the envelope. You need people like that to be needle movers.
One of our favorite guests is right here, JP Arencibia, who's the guest host today. Coming up, Armando Salguero will join us. We're going to take a look across NFL and Week 17, We'll preview, if we can, what is going to be an utter destruction tonight at Nissan Stadium by the Dallas Cowboys against a practice squad Tennessee Titans lineup. We'll tell you who's not playing. And we'll look ahead to Monday night. Bills, Bengals, and the number 1 seed that is at stake. All of that and more straight ahead on OutKick 360.
In the latest edition of the Trey Wallace podcast. I am Trey Wallace, happy to be joined by Saturday Down South national columnist, correspondent, you name it. He does everything. Connor O'Gara, what's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing well, man. It's nice to do a little home and home with you. Had you on the Saturday Down South podcast last week, be able to come on your show this week. I feel like there's like a million things that we can talk about as we get into bowl season. So yeah, man, I guess because I went in like 12 different directions with you. So it's only fitting that we probably do the same with me.
No, man, it happens. And we're getting into the crazy part of bowl season, kind of like, the mid-majors are out of the way. Now we're starting to get some of the bigger games that folks can get excited about towards the future, starting on like Friday. And you get a nice matchup Friday night with Tennessee, Clemson, a couple other matchups scattered, throughout the day, then getting into Saturday. If we're looking outside of Ohio State and Georgia and TCU, Michigan, are there 2 or 3 games that stand out to you? They're like, okay, these have little implications towards maybe the 2023 season.
How about South Carolina, Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl? Really interested to see the way that this plays out for Spencer Rattler, somebody who has just had a season that I don't know if there's a recent comp to it where, man, after those first 10 games, everybody who was low on Spencer Rattler was like, see, this is why this was never going to work. What a horrible decision. South Carolina kind of wasted a year with all these great skill players, a lot of Marcus Satterfield hate. And now, just like that, after the 2 games that Spencer Rattler had, he's got a chance to do something very unique. And I wonder how that impacts his NFL draft status. I wonder if he is deciding based on how he performs in this game and the feedback that he gets, if he's coming back for another year. Shane Beamer would love to be able to move past sort of the awkwardness of these last few weeks with Marshawn Lloyd, Jaheim Bell entering the transfer portal. So I've got a lot of attention on that game. And then obviously against the Notre Dame team that's had a very herky-jerky year in itself for year one of the Marcus Freeman era. So looking forward to that. And then a game that I'm going to be at right after I come back from the Peach Bowl will be the ReliaQuest Bowl, which I still want to call the Outback Bowl because come on, let's
the Outback Bowl.
It's still the Outback Bowl. Like let's be real. But yeah, seeing the way that Zach Arnett responds to a very atypical situation. I think it was Ross Dellinger who said this is the first time that a sitting head coach has died while active since like Randy Walker 2006. I mean, This is very strange to see this set of circumstances. Fortunately for Zach Arnett, a few weeks to be able to prepare. We know that he had full autonomy on that side of the ball on defense. So you would hope that Mississippi State with a veteran quarterback in Will Rogers is going to be ready to go. I don't think they're losing that football game. I just don't. I'm kind of amazed that the spread is only Mississippi State -1, seeing as how Illinois is not going to be playing with Chase Brown, who's kind of the heart and soul of that offense. So I'm really looking forward to being able to see the way that Mississippi State responds. But yeah, there's intrigue. You want to get into Kentucky and Iowa, the rock fight that could happen there.
Are they going to get the 31 points? Like, that's the biggest thing that stands out to me. Well, they hit it.
How's that, dude? How's that over under not in the 20s? It's going to be bad, but I'm looking forward to it. That's got the Sickos committee written all over it.
It's one of those games where, and I put it in a column that I had written this week. It's like, okay, what are you getting out of the offenses? You have no idea. Are you going to get something out of Kentucky running game? Okay, well, that's going to be interesting and hard to find out.
During the break, our guest host, JP Arencibia, went to OutKick.com/bet, and he took the 14 points that the Titans are receiving tonight on Thursday Night Football. I don't know why you did that.
I'm not a pro, but I will say it's raining outside. Turf is wet. Crazier things have happened.
Oh, that Al Michaels is yet again getting a dud for Thursday Night Football. We're certainly not with our next guest. Armando Salguero joins us on OutKick 360. Time to preview NFL Week 17, which does include Titans-Cowboys, which kicks off tonight in Nashville. Armando, good to see you, man.
Well, first of all, I got to say, it's a historic moment where OutKick 360's got two Cubans on at the same time.
That's right.
We're going to crash the entire network here in the next 10 minutes.
Well, especially if you have a little cafecito for me. We can definitely get after it here.
El cafecito, I'd rather have a arroz con pollo.
What about this? I will have to throw this out there, though. You got the old school. I grew up going to the old school Orange Bowl right there, which now is Lone Depot Park. But I wish they never had torn that down, because that thing, talk about not only great games, but some serious fights in the crowd.
Serious fights in the crowd. Worst bathrooms in the world. It's like you go to a trough, and it's a trough. It's an actual trough to go to the bathroom. The place leaked. But I saw the greatest football game I've ever seen in that facility, which was the 1985 Miami Dolphins beating the Chicago Bears. It was the only game the Bears lost in 1985. The only reason that the Dolphins are still the only undefeated, untied team in the entire 102-year history of the National Football League.
Armando Salguero with us, OutKick.com senior NFL writer. He'll be covering Week 17. Surface level, Armando, the best, and really, I was looking at this last week, the only great matchup was Bengals hosting Bills on Monday night. They flexed Baltimore and Pittsburgh into this Sunday night spot as well. But as far as playoff scenarios, those are happening. But the one that's going to impact next month the most is Monday night and Cincinnati, who all of a sudden can grab that number one seed. The Bills fell out of the top spot midway through the season. They're back in there. How important is number one this year for Buffalo?
Well, that's a great question and a great setup, Jonathan, because, by the way, I will be at that game for OutKick. So there's that. Watch OutKick coverage, plug, during that game and after that game. Why is it so important? If you're the Buffalo Bills and you have a chance to make everyone come to Buffalo in January. I was in Buffalo 2 weeks ago. It's not a pleasant experience, gentlemen. It's not a lot of fun. I mean, just the trip into the stadium is hair-raising because of the way that the roads are set up and the way that the weather is set up in Orchard Park. So regardless of whether you have a police escort, regardless of whether you're coming, 3 or 4 hours before the game, that doesn't matter because the weather doesn't give a crap about your police escort. And Bills Mafia shows up the night before to be all around the stadium, and it's a nightmare, although a daydream for the Bills. So it's important for them. It's a big advantage. For the Bengals, meanwhile, they're not going to get the number one overall, slot, but they're a team that has a statement that it wants to make. And the statement is, we beat the Kansas City Chiefs. We beat the Kansas City Chiefs last year. We beat them this year. We're going to do it again if we have to. And, oh, yeah, if they beat the Buffalo Bills on Monday night, they will have victories over the two top seeds in the AFC. That suggests that the Cincinnati Bengals are the best team in the AFC, seeds notwithstanding.
I was going to ask you next, where would you put Cincinnati going into January, going into the playoffs for the second consecutive year with Burrow versus Kansas City and Buffalo in this view, for getting back to the AFC Championship game, getting back to the Super Bowl, how would you stack those three teams?
So I'm going to say something that's going to send the folks in Buffalo and the folks in Kansas City into a rage. And I don't care because I'm, in Florida. It's like this. The Cincinnati Bengals have the most complete offense of those three teams. Their quarterback is every bit as good as Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Their wide receiver complement is better than anything the Bills have or the Chiefs have. And they have a running game. And, their offensive line now all of a sudden is playing well. I get it. La'el Collins is out now, and that's a bad situation. But that offense, top to bottom, is the most diverse and complete of any of those three teams.
JP and I, before the show, were discussing Tua Tagovailoa and yet another concussion protocol for him. Armando, you have covered the Dolphins for years, and you certainly are still very ingrained within the organization. How does this change the planning for the future with him versus midway through the season where he had one confirmed concussion and they kept him out an extra week even though he had cleared protocol? And for this to happen after the game again, knowing that all eyes are on the organization to begin with because they literally changed protocol for Tua and what happened in Cincy, what does this do for how the Dolphins will move forward at that position?
You mean beyond this season?
Yeah, just big picture. Do you have to plan for life without Tua based on the fact that he's had two confirmed and really three where they changed the protocol this year?
Well, having been ingrained with the Dolphins for a long time, as you said, Jonathan, plan is a word that is about the next week and a half. Okay. When you're talking plan, the last time they planned something years out or down the road, they tanked in 2019 and it failed. So they didn't get Joe Burrow, and they ended up getting Tua, which I'm sure they're okay with, but he's not Joe Burrow. They planned to get Joe Burrow. Now, having said that, if they are thinking that Tua Tagovailoa is suddenly going to be more durable after multiple concussions, is suddenly going to be more capable and worth a bigger price tag, which is what would be necessary coming up through either a fifth-year option and extensions, that's a hard ask of even the Dolphins, because how do you commit $250 million to a player that here we are in the playoff push of 2022 and he's not available to you? And no fault of his own, but the fact of the matter is he's not there. And it's a cut and dry situation. And he has been injury prone throughout his time at Alabama and throughout his time with the Dolphins. So to commit that kind of money to that kind of history, you have to have a certain amount of, how would they say it?
I see. Well, I don't know if I can say it in Spanish here. Co-Jones.
Yeah, exactly. Co-sign Jones.
Yeah.
And, to do that, and I've talked to several general managers, not of the Dolphins, obviously, who have told me I would never do it.
JP, this is a foreign language to you when it comes to guarantees, because Major League Baseball is way different.
We don't have to worry about that.
But Armando, why is it such a faux pas for teams to just straight up tell us that they're not playing a player because they don't want him to get hurt? Because if Derek Carr doesn't pass a physical the third day after the Super Bowl, he's guaranteed $40 million based on injury, and he's locked in. Meanwhile, if he's healthy and he passes a physical, they can trade him and save $29 million on the cap. Is this what this came down to in Vegas? And if so, why can't they tell us that directly?
What it came down to in Vegas, Jonathan, is they've decided that Derek Carr is not going to be there, ever again. And so he's played his last game for the Las Vegas Raiders, and they're not saying that. Who cares what they're saying or not saying? They're also saying that we have to see Jarrett Stidham
Right.
to evaluate him. Jarrett Stidham has played for 3 years, all of them under Josh McDaniels, the head coach. So what does he have? What? He hasn't been looking at Jarrett Stidham the last 3 years? I mean, come on. So what they're saying, throw that out. What they're doing is they're setting themselves up for a trade, and somebody will come a-knocking before that January bonus is due, and they will set up a trade for Derek Carr, and off we go to the races, and it'll be completed in March.
Have you heard who I think is what they're setting up for in Las Vegas?
As far as a draft pick, as far as
who the next quarterback will be?
They don't know. They know who it's not going to be. And I know it's not going to be Jarrett Stidham, because if that's the case, they're going to be, looked at as a bunch of foofs. You got rid of Derek Carr for Jarrett Stidham? Really? And Josh McDaniel, last I heard, Josh McDaniel ran off Jay Cutler from Denver.
You know who he didn't run off?
Now he's running off Derek Carr from Las Vegas. He better get this right, because there's not going to be a number 3 team offering him a head coaching job after he ran off 2 good quarterbacks.
Tom Brady.
Yeah, I was going to say, what about Tom Brady? He didn't run off.
Yeah. Now, tell me why Tom Brady would go to Las Vegas.
Because Tom Brady's
single now.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think he's done.
I agree with you. And having said that, I think San Francisco is better. It also happens to be his hometown. I think Sean Payton is going to make a decision on where he goes. I think he happens to be a better head coach than Josh McDaniels. And Tom Brady and Sean Payton have talked. I know they have. There was an NFL investigation about it. And don't discount the possibility that he comes back to Tampa. It's comfortable. And they're not exactly a terrible team. They've got some issues, but they're not catastrophic issues. And there's Las Vegas too, of course.
Yeah. But which has its own issues as well, for sure. But McDaniels didn't run him off, and I think it makes sense if Brady's trying to bring other guys with him like he did to Tampa. That's one that is very intriguing. We know Denver's locked into their QB. How surprised were you they fired Hackett now instead of waiting 2 weeks? And why week 16 when we knew he was done in week 4?
Yeah, not surprised at all. And no one in the NFL was surprised either, because, I mean, you watch that game against the Rams, they got, boat raced. And it was they gave up 51 points, and they had issues on the sideline, and they had issues after the game, and they just had issues trying to just line up. And after a while, you embarrass people that don't like to be embarrassed, and I'm talking about ownership, you end up unemployed. And that's exactly what happened with Nathaniel Hackett. God bless him. I respect the guy for his knowledge of football, for his ability to connect with, certain people and certain players. But he was over his head in this head coaching position. It was obvious to everyone when they had to hire a game manager coach during the season after the first couple of weeks, so that person could manage the game for Nathaniel Hackett and help him manage the game. When that happens and you're losing and your quarterback is having the worst season of his career and you're having players arguing with each other on the sideline, and you're giving up 51 points, and other players are punching the other team after the game, you get fired.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. You imagine that's tough. That's a tough situation, bad culture. And I'm going to say this: I'm not an NFL insider. I don't have all the knowledge.
Anyone can be.
But I will tell you, my front runner for the Broncos position, Gerard Mayo, of the New England Patriots. Guy's a superstar. I've talked to him. He's told me that he wanted to take a year off. He wanted to take a year from the opportunities last year.
Mm-hmm.
He had told me he wanted to wait another year to then become a head coach. And he's a guy that would be a great spot for that job.
JP, he is a great head coaching candidate. I'm just wondering if he's a fit at a place that stepped out with a non-experienced head coach hire and it failed miserably. Would they repeat the process with a non-experienced head coach hire? I'm getting the feeling, because they are a veteran team and a team that needs, the window is closing fast, they need somebody that can hit the ground running, and that to me says experience hire.
I think a little young blood, though, can help that. And here's the thing, too, with Gerard. He's a buddy, so I'm going to push for him. But he was a guy who went from not being great in Tennessee, a redshirt, to a first-round pick, to the player of the year defensively, to multiple-time
champion?
The champion, yes, a Super Bowl champion. Smart, was a businessman. I mean, he checks off all the boxes. I think that he would be great, and I agree with the experience, but I also think, we're seeing it with Saturday, there's something to be said with champions, players that tick a little different at times.
Well, I mean, it certainly resonates in the locker room. Vrabel's a great example too. You know, like the respect he garners in the locker room, because he's been literally, to what you're saying, he's been in every single seat of any player on the 53-man roster and the practice squad.
Yeah.
You know, he's been a special teams player. He's caught touchdowns in the Super Bowl, and, you know, he's been traded, you know, after helping win world championships at his organization. I mean, he can relate to literally everybody in the locker room, which is unusual for any coach.
You know where he makes a lot of sense is Houston.
Yeah. Did they interview him?
I'm not sure if they did it. I'm working on the next cycle. You're asking me about the last cycle, but it makes sense to me because Nick Caserio is a New England Patriot guy. Gerard Mayo is obviously a New England Patriot guy. They know each other well. Gerard Mayo, that's going to be a very young team with a young quarterback, and they need leadership. So if Lovie Smith doesn't translate to another year or year two, Mayo makes a lot of sense there.
I got a question for you. What are the chances with the 1-2 punch that the Dolphins have, which I think is, I was asking Hutton this, probably the best 1-2 punch that we've seen with Waddle and Tyreek, but what are the chances they can sneak in without Tua and having those monsters catching footballs?
No, dude, I think that they can walk in. Honestly, Teddy Bridgewater, we're acting like Teddy Bridgewater is a schlub. Teddy Bridgewater, you know, was a bona fide starting NFL quarterback for a couple of years. He had one start this year, and one play into the one start, they took him out of the game on a concussion protocol because he stumbled. Not because he had a concussion,
right?
Because he stumbled. And he came back the next week in as a reliever, sort of, to Skylar Thompson, and he balled out. You got, like JP mentioned, you got Tyreek, you got Waddle, the Penguin. You're going to get yours, and you're going to make some plays, and you're going to be a dangerous team. My concern with the Dolphins is not so much on offense with Teddy Bridgewater. It's that defense that just has been curiously ineffective and inconsistent this year.
Armando, Ron Rivera is going back to Carson Wentz because he quote unquote needs a spark for his team. I realize they're 0-2-1 recently in their last 3, but Heineke hasn't been awful. They've been really bad in the red zone, but Heineke hasn't been awful. Is this the right call to get the Commanders to the postseason?
I don't know if it's the right call or not. I mean, I don't know everything that Ron Rivera knows. I know some things more than Ron Rivera. Like, I can actually speak Spanish. But I would say this to you. Carson Wentz in short sample size is better than Taylor Heineke. And the reason for that is Taylor Heineke's superpower is getting the guys around him to rally around him. And they make plays for him, and they just love the dude. And I love the dude, and I don't even know the dude. I love the dude. Carson Wentz is a better quarterback. He's got a better arm. He reads defenses faster. He's bigger. He's more mobile. He makes better, he's able to make all of the throws that Taylor Heineke isn't necessarily able to do. So, do you need a guy the next 2 weeks, Ron Rivera, that's going to rally your peeps and get the guys motivated? Or are they already motivated because they're trying to make the playoffs and they need, an ace quarterback or as close to it as you have on your roster? That's why Carson Wentz is going to get a shot, because his flaw doesn't matter. Those guys are going to be motivated. They're going to be playing regardless.
Final thing for you. Would you bet on Tampa or Carolina to come out of the NFC South? I realize it may not matter once they win this division, but the situation in Carolina is incredible considering how better they got after trading their best players. They got nothing out of Baker Mayfield. All of a sudden, he's putting up numbers with Sean McVay. And here's Sam Darnold, who's back, and they're continuing to win with the run game that is dominant. And Tampa, they're down 10 practically every week, and somehow Brady pulls these final drives out to help them win and stay in it. Who do you bank on over the final 2 weeks?
Yeah, so you're asking me to bet on
Awful
Tom
teams.
Brady or Sam Darnold in a big game.
Yes.
Even I can answer that.
Think about this. Tom Brady or Sam Darnold. And this is, I know how this is going to play out.
Yes.
I'm going to go with
ahead.
a logical answer.
Yeah.
And next week, you're going to bring up, look at stupid Armando. He picked Tom Brady over Sam Darnold. What a foof he is. But that's fine. I'm going with Tom Brady.
Okay.
And he can't call you stupid. We're Cuban brothers. I'll come after.
Well, I would never do that, Armando. The Lions lost.
Okay, all right.
The Lions lost, so I lost all my firepower with that. They lost yet again. Armando, great stuff, man. Really looking forward to the coverage for Monday Night Football in Cincinnati as the Bengals host the Bills. This could be an awesome atmosphere and game and a bit of a preview of two of the best teams as we get ready for the playoffs. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Thank you, guys. JP. All right, brother.
Mucho gusto.
Armando Salguero has been our guest. You can read all of his great work at OutKick.com. Coming up, we'll have some headlines in about 15 minutes, but when we come back, it is time to air our grievances. Our top grievance of the week with primary complaint is next on OutKick 360.
Yeah, I think because things, transitioned from that regime side to that fundamentalist side. So we also had to change some of our tactics and our procedures and everything else and how we did things to cope with these guys, because they were coming up with some ingenious ways of doing things along the line as well, with some of the IEDs, some of the, the booby trapping the houses, things like that, using the cell phones to call to detonate everything. So it became, I think, as much as you say, more violent in that way, because with the regime guys too, we knew that there was the end state was trying to get Saddam, so that we needed intel as well. We needed to gather that intelligence. There was only so much that was there from previous, just historical data. Then we had them actually making it make it real intel and workable intel. But with the fundamentalists, if you gave them a chance to vote, and we'd say vote based off, okay, does this guy want to is he going to go along with the capture, or is he wanting to fight? And then let's see who wins. They would rather fight than do anything. There was, so many times guys would detonate suicide vests because it's like, well, they're not going to take me, clack themselves off, thinking they're killing, other folks around them. But, they just, I don't know, they just were different folks. And it was like we had to get more violent in a way, because again, we were going after intel and doing things, and our procedures and everything on the battlefield just had to kind of adjust just like they were doing.
That's crazy. I truly cannot imagine. And I was in college. I started college in 2010. So I was in high school when things were getting kind of real bad in the 06, 07 era. And I remember people would always talk about do we really need to be fighting these guys? Are they really that bad? And I'm like, this Zarqawi guy's literally chopping people's heads off, right? And don't think it stops there. Like, if this guy could, he'd chop all of our heads off too. Fortunately, they dropped a couple bombs on him, I believe, if I recall correctly. So now I want to get into some comparing and contrasting. What were the big differences between fighting in Iraq versus fighting in Afghanistan? Was it mostly the terrain? Was it the level of the combatant? Like, what were the big takeaways that were different from each other?
I think early on with Afghanistan was, everything was so spread out. Everything was so far in between, and we didn't have many helo assets early in the war, just because of how, basically really having to share them along with the other task force and things like that. And so there was a lot more driving, or you would get flown to an area and then you'd be there for a bit, and then, oh, you're not getting there, you're not getting back to your home base for a while. So you're trying to make do of it and literally just sometimes sitting around doing nothing. But then within Iraq, you had more cities, bigger cities, everything else that we were hitting. Granted, you had Kandahar, you had Kabul, but everything really wasn't happening in those locations. It was farther out because, where the terrorists had their training camps from, years before us ever getting there. But then within Iraq, they could hide right there in the cities. There were, so much, just open roads, everything around. And everything else, at a lot more built up areas, and it was an easier road system to get around. So it made it easier for them as well to move around. The terrain, definitely changed throughout. Iraq, you had your river valleys in a way, and you had the humidity, you had palm groves, everything else, and then you had your rocky mountain areas, dry areas. But then Afghanistan was just so severe with the mountains. I mean, that that's some treacherous terrain in itself.
Coming up in 30 minutes, Braves general manager Alex Anthopulous joins us as JP Arencibia's special guest. Great to have JP in studio with us. 6th and Peabody, our location for OutKick 360 across the OutKick network. Before that, though, it's time for Primary Complaint.
It's time to air our top grievance of the week.
You can complain all you want.
My job is so unfulfilling. Don't run away from your feelings.
It's time for Primary Complaint on OutKick 360.
Guys, my primary complaint this week is simple. It's the last week of coverage about college recruiting and rankings. Typically, we're going to see Alabama, Georgia, and the major programs up top. And now, no matter what happens and who gains ground, guess what? The transfer portal a year from now upsets everything. So a lot of the guys we're talking about now won't even be playing for the program that they just committed to and signed with by 2024. That's my primary complaint.
My primary complaint, I've been waiting to air this out. I'm going to even grab the mic because it really bothers me. It absolutely fires me up. I'm watching Texas Tech beat the brakes off of Ole Miss yesterday, and you're down 20 points in the fourth quarter or 13, and you make a tackle, and you stand over the guy you just tackled when you're down 2 touchdowns. What are you doing? And then the other thing that bothers me is if you're up or you're down as a receiver 30 points and you get a first down and you give the first down sign, you should probably have about 50 other first downs before you do that. It kills me to watch young players showboat when they're getting their tail whooped. And that is my primary complaint.
Gentlemen, my primary complaint is that tramp stamps are apparently making a comeback. How did we get back here, and no pun intended, but studies are showing that the negative stigma around a tramp stamp is also declined. I don't get it. Listen, if you're thinking about getting a lower back tattoo or a tramp stamp, please do not. If I see a woman that has that, I know this is not the first bad decision she has made. It's not attractive. No one's ever uttered the phrase that tramp stamp makes her more attractive. And so I'm sitting there and it's like, listen, if I do enough digging, I'm sure I'm going to find a GED, a couple of kids, a few misdemeanors. It's just not a good look. And I mean, like, what's next? Are we just waiting for the barbed wire bicep tattoo to come back as well? It's not a good look. Don't fall for it. You're only going to regret it. And that is my primary complaint.
Yeah, you've got like the thorns and the heart with the arrow through it or whatever for the tramp stamp. Yeah, I've never understood that.
No, that's not a good look, and I agree. I think you put it very kindly that that's not the only bad decision that person's ever made.
And if it is the first, it's the first of many.
Yeah, they have fallen off the wagon.
Yeah, not good. And are they really coming back though, Davey?
The New York Post put out an article, and again, like everything's trendy. Like it kind of comes back around. And I mean, we're probably, like 20 years removed from when that was a thing. So I could at least see the logic behind why we might be getting back there. But
well, is the young audience, or is this just like the 50-year-olds now going in for a touch-up?
I think we're hitting the new generation.
Oh, wow.
You know what I love too? You know what I love too about that is that it was the stigma of it has now changed. Because, yeah, they haven't gotten it for 20 years, so nobody has seen it. Of course it has.
Oh, man, I just realized we shouldn't have made fun of this because Matt's got one here in studio, lower back tat. Coming up.
I hope it's a nice one.
Yeah, well, we'll take his word for it, I guess. Coming up, 10 Major League Baseball umpires are set to retire. How will that impact the game next season? We've got JP's thoughts on that. Plus, Alex Anthopulous in hour number 2. All of that and more straight ahead. OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network.
Thousands of flights canceled, thousands of people stranded in airports waiting to be rebooked, God knows when with their luggage, God knows where. It's a giant mess, and this isn't the first time or the second time, or even the third time this has happened in the last year either. It's time for final thoughts. Southwest has canceled over 9,000 flights and counting. 3,000 canceled Monday, 2,600 canceled yesterday, almost 3,000 today, and over 1,500 are already expected to be canceled on Thursday. It's a freaking mess as passengers who already missed Christmas with their loved ones are now hoping to get somewhere, anywhere by 2023. But what is to blame, you ask? Well, it's a tale as old as time. Airlines cancel flights and then blame it on weather, whether or not there's weather or not. Yeah, there was bad weather late last week, but no, you can't continue to blame weather when other airlines are flying to and from those same destinations. I mean, I know some Americans have been conditioned to be rather oblivious in these last few years, but we aren't that stupid. No, there's something else brewing over there at Southwest Airlines, and it stinks. But don't worry, y'all. The former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, is on the case, and he's an angry elf.
Southwest is unable to locate even where their own crews are, let alone their own passengers, let alone baggage. So I conveyed to the CEO our expectation that they are going to go above and beyond to take care of passengers and to address this. They indicated a number of issues that they're having with systems, legacy systems for managing their schedule and where their crews are. But the bottom line is the rest of the aviation system has been on the road to recovery since the worst days of the storm going into Friday of last week. As of today, as I'm looking at the different airlines, most of them are in the low single digits in terms of cancellation rates, averaging about 5% for all of the other airlines. For Southwest right now, we appear to be north of 70%. So their system really has completely melted down. And I've made clear that our department will be holding them accountable for their responsibilities to customers, both to get them through this situation and to make sure that this can't happen again.
Can't happen again? Isn't that what you said the last 4 freaking times this happened? Maybe your rough and tumble talking tos aren't doing the trick there, partner. But boy, wouldn't it be nice if the buffoons of the Biden administration cared as much about passengers stranded in airports and then gouged to get home as they did about forced face diapering in between bites? Yeah, that'd be the day. And no, the airlines themselves are not blameless in this. They've received over $54 billion in COVID bailout money from we the people. And apparently that's not enough to figure out their issues, which are not rocket science, given weather has been a freaking issue for air travel since the beginning of air travel. So what else could all this be? Well, let's not forget the pilot, flight attendant, and ground crew shortages these airlines are still grappling with, thanks to 2 things. Government incentivized unemployment benefit laziness and a COVID vaccine mandate that's still wreaking havoc on flight crews and pilots. Yeah, the friendly skies aren't so damn friendly when your pilot worries about keeling over in the air thanks to myocarditis or other vaccine side effects. This is all a man-made disaster, and yet no entity that contributed to said disaster will be held accountable. No, people will just suck it up, shell out big bucks to make it home one way or another, and then in a couple of months, the same damn thing will happen again, and Pete will go back on TV and vow tough consequences. We the people are tired. We're just tired. But on the bright side for Biden's non-binary nuclear waste czar thingy, there's plenty of ladies' luggage for it to choose from at the airport of they-them's choice. And those are my final thoughts from Nashville. God bless and take care.
Withrow in Nebraska. He's back with us next week. JP Arencibia in studio with us as today's special guest host. Glad you're with us, just like that. The second hour is here. What'd you think of hour 1?
I thought it was great. I told you to pick up the slack for me on the NFL conversations because
I didn't have to.
I follow it, but I don't follow it as intently as you guys do. But I am excited about hour 2 more so because I want to stick it to Chad.
Oh, I see why.
Because big Braves guy, and we have the man who's assembled that team coming on. So
General Manager Alex Anthopulous will join us in 20 minutes. I'm not even sure if Chad knows he's coming on. I may just I'll just text him right before with the link and be like, you're going to be extremely jealous of. And it's more than just the fact I'm sitting next to JP Arencibia, and see what he says.
Yeah, it's sorry, Chad.
In advance.
Hang with him.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got that. We'll get to one big thing on every NFL game for Week 17. which, by the way, kicks off tonight here in Nashville. Thursday Night Football, the Cowboys in town, and plenty of fans, too. It'll be a home field advantage for Dallas. Just has that feel. It always is when the big teams are in town against the Titans. And Josh Dobbs will make his first career start in the NFL tonight for the Titans after joining the team less than a week and a half ago or so.
Take the points.
Yeah, JP's saying take the 14 points. I say give the 14 and take the over tonight.
You did the opposite of what I did, which is great.
I did. And it's just this is a team that's resting for a matchup in Week 18, the Titans. Win and get in. Win and win the AFC South. And, JP, I'm telling you, man, that their backups are so bad.
Can I sell? Give me an opportunity to sell.
Please.
Give me the camera. Give me the camera, please.
Let me hear your pitch.
Listen, you have these young, hungry backups that are trying to prove themselves tonight. It's rained earlier. It's a wet turf. Dak and the Cowboys play on a AstroTurf. It's real grass, natural, 100% USDA-approved grass out there. Guys will be slipping. They will not be used to it. I'm telling you, Josh Dobbs, University of Tennessee, he's fired up. The Tennessee Vols are back. He's feeling better about his life and his opportunities as a quarterback. I'm telling you, I don't know if they win, but they give him a darn fight. These young guys are coming. They're hungry. Watch.
What was the worst team you ever played on? What year?
I played on all bad teams. That's great.
The worst.
The worst one was probably Texas 2014.
At one point, did you say, you know what? These backups, these guys that are trying to earn a roster spot, we're gonna take it to them tonight. Did you ever arrive at the ballpark thinking that, like, just randomly? Tonight's not that night for the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah,
trust me.
Wait, listen. There's plenty of times where we become the villain. At some point, you're just like, you know what? I'm coming to the ballpark.
We're gonna spoil it.
We're 50 games out of any contention, and I'm gonna be the bad guy.
Okay.
I'm setting the tone, and we go out there and you sweep a team and you let them know about it. But listen, don't count the guys that are the backups. I hope they're listening. I hope they've gone and had a great night's sleep. I hope they're prepared with their one inch spikes because it's wet out there, boys. We don't need you slipping on the grass, but the Cowboys will be slipping tonight.
Wow.
You watch it.
Wow. Stat stuffing opportunity goes to the wayside for the Dallas Cowboys, according to JP. Davey, you have an update on the Titans roster?
Jim Wyatt just put this out, but the Titans have placed quarterback Ryan Tannehill, outside linebacker Bud Dupree, and inside linebacker Zach Cunningham all on injured reserve, effectively ending their season. And so, JP, to your point, you might get to watch Josh Dobbs a little bit more. Long shot that Tannehill was going to be coming back next week for the Week 18 matchup against the Jags, but now it looks as though it'll be between Josh Dobbs and Malik Willis starting that one out, and don't feel confident either.
Yep.
Hey, Tennessee Vols, I told you, the astronaut is going to make things happen today in Nashville, Tennessee. You watch. And I'm not saying they're going to win, but I'm just saying they're going to cover. That's all I'm saying.
I witnessed the worst beatdown performance individually in my life. Sideline for the Titans in Houston, Ken Whisenhunt era, 2014. Will Svitek is the left tackle. He's like the third or fourth left tackle that year. JP, he's the worst Titans player to ever put on a Titans uniform in the history of the franchise here in Tennessee. In my opinion. Awful. They put him one-on-one with J.J. Watt. And this is in the middle of J.J. Watt's 4-year span where he was more than dominant. He was Hall of Fame worthy off this 4-year span with 69.5 sacks. All these quarterback pressures. The next closest pass rusher was like 18 or 19 sacks behind him during that same 4-year span. And they left him one-on-one. Tonight, Davey, have we double-checked Micah Parsons? Is he playing, or is it official one way or the other?
Still questionable.
Okay. Micah Parsons will be one-on-one with Dennis Daly, who is not Will Svitek bad, but he's next in line. He's the worst player on this Titans 53-man roster, and he will be trying to block Micah Parsons, who many former NFL players will tell you just pound for pound, position for position doesn't matter. He's the best football player in the league. get ready. Get some popcorn. If you have no other reason to watch this, watch number 11 pass rush the crap out of Joshua Dobbs. May God have mercy on Joshua Dobbs' soul tonight.
Run, Josh.
Because he's,
Tuck it and run.
It's going to be rough,
Don't
man.
stay in the pocket. Tuck it and run, Josh. Let's go. You're going to be able to get past some guys. They're going to have a little slippery turf out there.
Let's, I want to get your opinion on a couple of Major League Baseball topics.
All right.
We've got 10 umpires set to retire.
Thank God.
Okay. That's the most since 1999. Is this, you say thank God, so this is a big deal because we're about to get better umpiring?
No, I just think that there's good and bad umpires. There's always going to be good and bad umpires.
Okay.
That's just the way it works. I think a lot of these older guys have been there for way too long because being a Major League umpire, first off, the union protects you they are so protected. They don't even have to answer questions after games. These guys
You're right.
can literally do whatever they want to do and not have to answer and not be credible to anything. But they're there until they retire, and then that allows the next group to come through. They have a spot for life, essentially. So why, and this is what I thought I've always, as a player, if I stunk, which I did at times in my career in the major leagues, I was sent down. Why doesn't an umpire have the opportunity, if you're not good, send them down? Don't have a lifetime in a tattooed contract because you were a full-time Major League umpire.
What pool are they pulling this from? Is it all AAA?
Yeah, AAA.
It's always AAA.
So it's the same exact. I mean, these guys work from the minor leagues all the way up. So it's the same.
But they're never sent down.
No, but so what happens is that they have guys in AAA that are up and down. Right.
Yeah.
So, they have a vacation. This guy comes up, concussion, this guy. So they have their up and down guys. But the guys that once you get your number and you're a full-time Major League umpire, until the day they retire, they're in.
That's their crew.
They change crews, but they're in the big leagues. They're in the big leagues until they retire. Then the next guy gets his Major League number.
Wow.
And so
there's no way to actually judge. I know we see a lot of the analytics involved with this now, like who's the most accurate versus what the ball strike would have been. But are they meticulous with how they're grading them, or is it more or less just be consistent, good or bad, be consistent for the player that's at the plate?
Well, if you hear an umpire speak, they'll tell you that they have a little bit more room than what you see on the TV, right? So their system is going to be different than the system that you might see on the TV. But that's, again, it comes down to the credibility. Even as players, we used to say, hey, if we did something wrong, we got fined and it was public. And supposedly, if they do things wrong, they have their repercussions, but it's not seen publicly. So we used to say, hey, put that on there.
Yeah.
Because everything that we did as players always was in the public eye. You get sent down, you get reprimanded. Everybody saw it. And
you had to answer for it.
Exactly. And so it's like, these guys are protected. They don't have to have conversations. And listen, I love them. I think that I worked with them a lot. There's a lot of great ones. There's a lot of good guys out there. But there has to be a system that is not like, hey, once you're in, you're in. Don't worry about it. You can be good or not be as good, but you're still going to stay in. Send them down. They stink. Send them down.
Can the system be automatic balls and strikes? Are you in favor of this?
Oh, I hate it. I think that.
So you'd rather have the human error.
Yeah, you
element.
have to. You have to because then what happens is we've already lost. Think about baseball as a sport for entertainment, right? You don't have the Lou Pinellas anymore. You don't have the Tommy Lasordas. There's no more
Bobby
coming
Cox.
out. Yeah, there's no more coming out and setting the world on fire and getting the boys fired up and getting the crowd going. There's no more of that entertainment element of watching the umpire or the manager kick dirt on the umpire or throw a base or whatever it is. Now you walk out because it's a replay. It walks out. As soon as they walk out, they say, hey, don't walk out. Oh, all right, you're gone. And that's it. And then there's no real conversation. I also think that for the catcher and all that stuff, those are big deals. Like, you have to be able to have those conversations. If not, we're becoming all robots.
I haven't thought about it that way. It's a lot like what we lost with Mike Leach. Whenever he passed away, he was one of a kind in how honest and forthright he was on literally anything. You could ask him any topic, he'd give you his opinion. It didn't matter.
His
didn't
coffee
care.
talk, my
didn't
favorite.
care. Managers, you're right, are so so less flamboyant and
But you can't do anything
because you take a step out and they're tossing.
Yeah, you're gone. There's no like running out there, hey, because you just stand at the front and you do this and they all right, challenge the play. And
so okay, what do you think about the challenge for ball and strike?
See, I like that though.
Yeah.
So I thought that was entertaining because I watched in the Arizona Fall League this year. I think it was Jason Dominguez took a strike 3. It was a full count. Takes a strike 3, which would have been, or he's out. If it was a ball, he walks. He challenges it. They go to the video board. And they have almost like in tennis, the tracker system.
Yes, it's very similar.
And it's
fast.
And it's great. And then all of a sudden, boom, ball. And then everybody goes crazy, which then I think, since they don't have credibility, I think that's kind of embarrassing for the umpire to kind of be put on blast. Like imagine
I mean,
you're at Truist Park, and it's a big thing, and it's Michael Harris, and he takes ball 3 or strike 3, and it was ball 4. They go to the board, the crowd goes crazy because even in tennis, they start clapping. And then ball 4, everybody goes crazy. I think it's a fun part of entertainment and adding to the value.
Well, and it's like the white hat for NFL officials. If you go to the replay booth and they get overturned, there's a stat for that, how many crews and what the average is for a call that's reviewed getting overturned, which is you have to reach a very high threshold for a call to be overturned. But if it's that egregious, I think there is an embarrassment factor to it, right?
100%.
Ball and strike, like if it's within a fraction of the plate, I get it. But some of these calls, man, especially low and outside or high, up and in, where you can see it's just clearly not a strike.
Yeah, it's
and guys are ringing up because that's just where they call their strike zone.
Well, that's the thing. I had some numbers that I was looking at earlier when people say, it's just one pitch, right? And that's the one thing that always bothers me is that they say it's one pitch. How about this? You have a 1-1 count. Major League average, 318 with an 842 OPS. That dude's making $300 million, right? If I get a 1-1 count to go to 1-2, the average drops to 161 with a 414 OPS. That means that person is out of a job. Those numbers are terrible. So if I can steal one strike, that's the difference. And then it allows me, even if I get a ball after that, if it goes to 2-2, it's still 170, right? So they're batting a $170, 449. But that 1-1 count, if I miss it and it goes to 2-1, they're hitting 337 with a 908 OPS. That's my Trout numbers. So that's where when people say it's just one pitch, why do you guys make such a big deal? Well, that's the difference between a guy becoming a Hall of Fame in the sense of numbers, right? If you're looking at numbers, or a guy that's the worst baseball player in history.
And how does that change the pitching too? Like you work a plate and you work this umpire for consecutive innings, trying to get the second and third at bat to set guys up. And on the mound, like if I miss this by the length of a baseball, or if I get the call right because he's calling that it should be a ball, but it's a strike. I know I'm going to have the guy on first anyway.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter how I pitch this guy.
Well, and that's where again it's the game is a fun game and it's intricate, but that's why the value of catchers now it's higher for a catcher now to steal a strike. Steal a strike means a ball out of the zone,
framing it.
Yeah, into the zone. It's more valuable now than blocking or throwing, because that's why you see guys with their knee down now, because it's like they think. And you could see with the numbers that I just said, they think that over time, the value of stealing a strike is more important. If you obviously you have to look at the big picture. This is all stats. Everything is now analytical. Big picture, it saves more runs. So you know how you have defensive save runs. It saves more runs than throwing out runners and blocking pitches in the dirt, and that's why it's become such a big deal.
It's a great discussion, great debate, and there has to be some middle ground there. Based on the technology available and the fact that as reluctant as many are to change the game, this makes sure that the guys at the plate are treated the same way as the guys on the mound. And right now there's a big discrepancy on how those balls and strikes go based on crew to crew, and not even crew to crew, plate umpire night to night within the crew. And there's a scouting report on all those dudes, I'm sure.
Every single one, yeah. Heat zones and everything.
Alex Anthopulous has done plenty of scouting reports, and he has absolutely crushed it with this Braves lineup as general manager. He's about to join us, and he joined Braves on Bally recently and discussed the young core on the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's risk to this, right? So, I mean, you can look at our own team. We've had elite young players get hurt at the same time, right? So Mike Soroka was right there in the Cy Young conversation. Unfortunate thing that happened to him. Obviously Acuna, right? Just a dynamic, young, exciting superstar player, or guys have down years. So there's risk to this. There's no doubt about it. When you lock yourself into this, and I think, that's the trade-off, right? I mean, you're guaranteeing, you're committing. But look, we do like the fact that guys can just worry about going out and playing. They don't have to worry about making, certain salary, get certain statistics and so on, and that they know that they're going to be here. So there's a few components. One, the fan base can buy a jersey and feel pretty good about it. That's not the reason you do it, but certainly a nice thing to add. There's continuity and stability for the organization, for the lineup, across the board. I know the word culture has been used a lot. I know I don't necessarily love the word, but I think, the more continuity we have in the room, those are the guys that set the tone. So, and like you mentioned, it's a good place to play in a competitive team. So by all these guys staying, it ensures hopefully that we stay competitive, assuming one, they stay healthy, and two, they continue to perform. And that's not always a given, right? As much as these guys are talented and they're great people and they work hard, no one plans on having a bad year. No one plans on getting hurt, but it happens. They're dealing with human beings. So it's a model that we've employed. I think it's important for us, for the parameters that we have, for the market we have, for what we have to work with. It doesn't mean that if I was a general manager in some other city, I would feel the same way. But, I do believe everything you do should be team specific. And in my view of the way things are set up, this is what works for the Braves.
In the latest edition of the Trey Wallace podcast, I am Trey Wallace, happy to be joined by Saturday Down South national columnist, correspondent, you name it. He does everything. Connor O'Gara, what's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing well, man. It's nice to do a little home and home with you. Had you on the Saturday Down South podcast last week, be able to come on your show this week. I feel like there's like a million things that we can talk about as we get into bowl season. So yeah, man, I guess because I went in like 12 different directions with you. So it's only fitting that we probably do the same with me.
No, man, it happens. And we're getting into the crazy part of bowl season, kind of like, the mid-majors are out of the way. Now we're starting to get some of the bigger games that folks can get excited about towards the future, starting on like Friday. And you get a nice matchup Friday night with Tennessee, Clemson, a couple other matchups scattered, throughout the day, then getting into Saturday. If we're looking outside of Ohio State and Georgia and TCU, Michigan, are there two or three games that stand out to you? They're like, okay, these have little implications towards maybe the 2023 season.
How about South Carolina, Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl? Really interested to see the way that this plays out for Spencer Rattler, somebody who has just had a season that I don't know if there's a recent comp to it where, and man, after those first 10 games, everybody who was low on Spencer Rattler was like, see, this is why this was never going to work. What a horrible decision. South Carolina kind of wasted a year with all these great skill players, a lot of Marcus Satterfield hate. And now, just like that, after the 2 games that Spencer Rattler had, he's got a chance to do something very unique. And I wonder how that impacts his NFL draft status. I wonder if he is deciding based on how he performs in this game and the feedback that he gets, if he's coming back for another year. Shane Beamer would love to be able to move past sort of the awkwardness of these last few weeks with Marshawn Lloyd, Jaheim Bell entering the transfer portal. So I've got a lot of attention on that game. And then obviously against the Notre Dame team that's had a very herky-jerky year in itself for year one of the Marcus Freeman era. So looking forward to that. And then a game that I'm going to be at right after I come back from the Peach Bowl will be the ReliaQuest Bowl, which I still want to call the Outback Bowl because Come on, let's
the Outback Bowl.
It's still the Outback Bowl. Like let's be real. But yeah, seeing the way that Zach Arnett responds to a very atypical situation. I think it was Ross Dellinger who said this is the first time that a sitting head coach has died while active since like Randy Walker 2006. I mean, this is very strange to see this set of circumstances. Fortunately for Zach Arnett, a few weeks to be able to prepare. We know that he had full autonomy on that side of the ball on defense. So you would hope that Mississippi State with a veteran quarterback in Will Rogers is going to be ready to go. I don't think they're losing that football game. I just don't. I'm kind of amazed that the spread is only Mississippi State -1, seeing as how Illinois is not going to be playing with Chase Brown, who's kind of the heart and soul of that offense. So I'm really looking forward to being able to see the way that Mississippi State responds. But yeah, there's intrigue. You want to get into Kentucky and Iowa, the rock fight that could happen there.
Are they going to get the 31 points? Like, that's the biggest thing that stands out to me. Well, they hit it.
How's that, dude? How's that over under not in the 20s? It's going to be bad, but I'm looking forward to it. That's got the Sickos committee written all over it.
It's one of those games where, and I put it in a column that I had written this week. It's like, okay, what are you getting out of the offenses? You have no idea. Are you going to get something out of the Kentucky running game? Okay, well, that's going to be interesting and hard to find out.
OutKick 360 rolls on. Glad you're with us as we broadcast in Music City, Nashville, Tennessee, across the OutKick network. With JP Arencibia, I'm Jonathan Hutton. Chad Withrow back with us next week. And with the guest hosts each day, we've had some special guests. And JP, you're bringing one of your favorites.
Yeah, this guy is the gentleman who called me up in the major leagues and also one of the most respected and hardest working. Guy started from literally the mailroom to do what he's doing. The general manager and president of baseball operations. I know that it looks like Alex Anthopulous. Are you in the frozen tundra right now? Or are you driving through the ice age?
I'm in Toronto. Your old stomping grounds. There's a lot of snow, but I'm glad you guys invited me on to talk Titans.
Yeah. They, by the way, JP, they could use the roster management here in Nashville with the Titans based on the way Alex does things.
Well, I would imagine that Alex could handle that job without a problem. Hopefully, you're not frozen. But Alex, first off, I'm very excited because the guy who's usually in this seat is an enormous Braves fan. Is crying when you win the World Series, Braves fan, and I have been rubbing it in that Alex Anthopoulos is on the show today, but. By the way, congratulations. And do you have a potion that you give guys and agents that you just start talking and they're just like, yes, you know what? Let's sign the entire team, the field.
I mean, look, when you drop bags of money, it helps, right? So I think a lot of these things, a lot of the guys that we're signing, right, are pretty far away from free agency. And again, GP, obviously you lived through it as a player. I think having guaranteed money and not having to worry about getting hurt, not having a good season, if you're getting your at-bats, if you're getting your innings, or if you're getting your saves or things like that, and just being all about team and not having to worry about that kind of stuff, I think is a real advantage. So there's times where there's been plenty of deals where it's in hindsight, probably the club would have been well served to go year to year. But I do like the fact that guys could just go out and play. If they're not playing or if their roles are changing, it's not because of any contractual implications or financial implications. Everything that's being done is to win games, the manager, the coaches, and so on. And I like the team atmosphere that does create.
Braves General Manager, President of Operations, Alex Anthopulous joins us live in Toronto in the frozen tundra, courtesy of JP Arencibia and OutKick 360. Alex, the spending that we've seen this offseason, were you surprised by it first? And second, what do you think changed with the years and the money that was handed out for some of these guys?
Yeah, I've been asked that before, what I think of the offseason. Obviously, there's been some huge deals. I think it's a player-specific thing. 2019, I believe, was the last time at the winter meetings there was some huge contracts being doled out, but there was elite players, Steven Strasburg, Anthony Rendon, Garrett Cole. There's some big-time guys. So you look at the guys that have gotten big contracts, Aaron Judge, historic season, one of the best players of the game, the 4 shortstops that are out there. So I think it's all based on elite talent. But I also think it's great that there's a lot of teams that are trying to win. There's very few teams that are taking a step back or trading players away. So I think knowing that, I think it's great for the game, great for fan bases. I think part of that is the expansion of the combination of those things, but I do think it's good for the game.
You've got to be thrilled with the young core and the lineup that you have to long-term deals. I'm not sure how many other organizations could do what you've been able to do. I'm sure all would love to do it. But when you set forth with this plan to look at the long-term core of your baseball team here, how did it come about, and how long ago, how quickly did you want to get started on locking these guys up, knowing what was on the horizon with some of the other contracts we're seeing now?
We're going to involve young players, hope that they're going to, it's hard. How many players are consistently good every year and healthy every year? The ones that are the ones that end up in the Hall of Fame, right? So even some really great players, we've seen guys that are cut loose, released that were all-stars or MVPs and things like that. So it happens when we all know how hard the game is. So it is a leap of faith when we're guaranteeing out so many years, when we still have these players for 3 or 4 or 5 years without doing anything. But, I think it's just we need to be competitive year in and year out. Fans give us great support, over 3 million fans. But just observing the sports scene there and the landscape, it became apparent to me within maybe a year of being there that you need to have a chance to win every single year. And if you do, fans will come out in droves and really support the team. But I think the minute you hit a bump in the road, or maybe they don't believe that you have a shot to contend, good chance they're going to tune you out. There's a lot of things to do in Atlanta. The climate's great and so on. So I think being able to sign these guys long-term, hopefully they're going to be good long-term players. But we do think it does give us a pretty good floor of being competitive for years to come. So if you're a fan base and you want to invest in the Braves, you know that we have a chance, and we're going to at least put a team on the field each year that has a chance come every spring.
Well, and I will say this, and you have to feel good about this. I live in Nashville in the offseason, and there's a ton of Braves around here. But I will say, after going to Truist Park and even hearing guys like Mike Trout say that it's the best place in baseball to play right now, if you build it, they will come. I mean, how unbelievable of a selling point is that for players to understand? Like, dude, you're going to come here, and it's going to be sold out every single night of raging Braves fans.
Yeah, it's a great feeling to hear, and I've heard that from a lot of players. So, and I say this all the time. It's all the people that are around the players day in and day out, right? So one, you take the fan base, the ballpark, the surrounding area, the Battery is a great environment. It's a competitive team, so coming to the ballpark, you have a chance to win each night is big as well. And we spend a lot of time, and it's not expensive to do necessarily, but finding good people. So your trainers, trying to have the best trainers, the staff take care of the families, the staff take care of the players. I think we try to be as player friendly as we can in the organization. And you hire the right individuals that have mentality, that want to make it a great place to be. And I think if our mindset is to do that from top to bottom, and when you follow that up with a good fan atmosphere, our media is good to our players, a competitive team, that's the goal, right? To make it the great place, a great place in the league to play. Hopefully, the best place to play. Because then ultimately, when you're trying to sign guys as free agents, that should break a tie for you if it's getting close. 99% of the time, it's the years and the dollars. But when it gets close, I do think where guys want to be, how competitive it is, I think it certainly helps, and that leads to being able to win. So it's rewarding. It's certainly exciting. But again, the players are the ones that starts with them, right? They're great players. They put a great team on the field. They compete. And I know that when we've traded for guys that have no trade clauses and so on, they talk about, man, we see you guys play on TV each night. Looks like a fun group, good group of guys, and I see the atmosphere and so on. So, the challenge in my chair is to be able to try to keep it going and continue to get good players and hopefully keep the players that we do have.
Alex Anthopulous, our guest on OutKick 360, Braves general manager. It's impossible to predict the health of a pitching rotation in October. But as GM, you've got to plan for the unknowns in the off season. How do you approach trying to get the best options for you now for what you have no idea is ahead of you as the season progresses, especially in the pitching rotation?
Yeah, that's the one area I still worry about it now. I mean, I feel good as if everyone stays healthy of who we have, but I know that there's likely, on average, 11 guys will make a start for us. Some of those 11, 7 of those 11 might make 20 or more, or something along those lines. But I know we're going to need a lot of bodies, and I worry about that. I wonder who those bodies are going to be, and you never have enough. And during the season, if things are going poorly or you need to backfill because guys are getting hurt and you're calling around, everyone's in the same boat. It's the hardest thing to acquire during the year. So it's probably the one thing I worry about with the team, to make sure we have enough depth. And even in this moment, we're not currently involved in anything for a starter. But if you were to ask me right now, if I can get an impactful piece, one more piece in the rotation would feel really good, because then I feel that much better about our depth, because there's no scenario we're going to go through the season with 5 guys. So just knowing that, and really the 2 best seasons we've had during the season were when we had deep rotations. Sure, we won the World Series in 21, but 2019 and 2022 we won 97 games and 101 games, and they were the deepest, strongest starting rotations that we've had.
How do you feel with the back end of the bullpen? I know that we talked about the success of teams in the playoffs. How do you feel on the back end of the bullpen right now? If it was the 9th inning, you're up 1, who you throwing into that situation?
And I think, Snit, the manager, is going to make that call, but I think just based on experiences, Iglesias has been a closer for a long time, done a nice job. AJ Minter as well has got experience doing that, but just as a left-hander, knowing that you might face, the big guys from the left side in the 8th inning or the 7th inning, and you may be able to use him in those spots. That's how I would guess it would go today. But again, he'll make that call. That's totally his decision to make. He's done a nice job with what we've given him in terms of the pen. But I really do believe over time and over years as a GM, the importance of a deep bullpen is so key, and especially over 6 months. You know that you played 20 games in a row and guys are up, and they may only appear in 2 games, but they may have been up 4 games in a row, and they're not going to pitch that day or they're not available. So that's why you want to be at minimum 6 guys deep, to me, that you pitch late in the game. And then the last 2 maybe could be long guys and so on, but you really need that depth. Now come the playoffs, you've got off days and so on, so you certainly can make some changes there and shorten it up and have 3 to 4 guys to pretty much get you through it. But during the year, having a deep bullpen is really important.
Alex, you said something right there that really fired me up, and I know that you take pride in this, is letting the manager make the decision. Obviously, now in baseball, there's a lot of talk with, it being managed from the front office and analytics department and stuff like that. And I don't see that with you guys. I've been around you guys long enough to watch it. Also, do you think that's why we're seeing older managers now have opportunities again to come back into the game, because they need a little bit more of that experience to mesh with the numbers?
Yeah, so I'd say this in terms of there's no doubt front offices are involved in all areas, right? That's just reality of today's game. But I can just speak for myself when it comes to the lineup card and bullpen usage and all that kind of stuff. I might get asked my opinion. There's times Brian might call me and say, "Hey, I thought about doing this, thought about doing that. What do you think?" He's not asking me what he should do. He might just like I would do with a trade. I might call him and say, "What do you think? I'm thinking about trading this guy. Give me your thoughts and ideas." And I'll solicit opinions. He'll solicit opinions, but it's his call to make. And I think it's critical that the players know that. It's critical that it's real because players have issues. You know it, JP. You lived it. They don't like where they're hitting in the lineup. They don't like that they're playing a certain day. They're not playing a certain day. If they knock on the manager's door, the last thing I want is say, "Don't talk to me. Go upstairs. Go talk to Alex. He pulled rank and told me you're not allowed to play today, or you have to hit in this spot in the lineup." I'm not doing that. So if he's going to run the team, run the clubhouse, have the respect of the players, he has to have the ability to do what he feels is best. So when you start weighing all those things and doing all those things, he needs to have the power to be able to do those things. So, the only time it falls on my lap is if we're going to trade a guy, or something from a contractual standpoint. Sure, that falls on my chair. But, once the lineup card is out, it's his call. Once the game starts, it's his call. We may talk about things, but he's making the decisions. And I've told him the following as well. Once the game starts, you better do what you feel is good, because I don't have to go down and sit at the media and talk to the media right after the game. They don't put me on the podium and ask me why I didn't bring in so-and-so reliever, why I didn't hit for so-and-so. You're the one who has to answer the questions and so on. So you better feel good about what you do. And if you want to talk about it after the fact, sure. But he has to own it. He does. That's part of the job. It's not easy. But I think it's important for our clubhouse that they know he runs the show. He makes the call. So if they have a complaint or an issue, they can go to him and he can do what he feels is best.
Alex Anthopulous with us from the Braves. What's the private moment like, Alex, when you hang up the phone and the Sean Murphy deal is done and he's locked up through 29 with a club option there?
It's pretty, when you're doing stuff like that, we're so big on not having things leak that it's kind of, we're moving as fast as we can to make sure that our PR department's involved. There's so many people you want to communicate with first, right? I called Brian. He's not involved in that kind of stuff. And he just figured, he told me, he's like, "Yeah, I'm not surprised. You've been signing all these other guys. I assume you're just going to sign them." But I won't call him and involve him and stuff like that, right? He doesn't get involved when it comes to contracts and money and all that kind of stuff. So I just called him and said, "Look, we got him signed. You're going to see this announced soon." Maybe call some other people in the organization, but really, other than our owner, a small group of staff from a baseball operations standpoint, and then obviously the PR department too. So I think but I'd say for the most part, with all these signings, I'd say it's a relief more than anything else that we have a core player signed. We know that they're going to be here. We feel like this is part of our plan. It's part of our core. Knowing you don't have to deal with it. You don't have to deal with salary arbitration going forward. You don't have to deal with any more negotiations. Negotiations are not fun. They take a lot of time, a lot of work. You're glad when it's resolved and it leads to a deal, but it's just a lot of work to go through it. A lot of approvals and things like that. You're talking a lot of money, right? A lot of responsibility that comes with that. So, and you need to make sure you're talking to your trainers and staff and so on. So I'd say it's a relief more than anything else when you're able to get deals done.
Do you still play the bass guitar?
No, you know what? I haven't done it in a while, but I think it'd be like being on a bike or skiing. It'd probably be the same kind of deal. But I have not, and I haven't really made time. You always have time but it's crossed my mind about at some point again, trying to get involved in it because I really did enjoy it when I did play.
Yeah, come to Nashville and do it.
Yeah, we're right up the road.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I will say this. Speaking of Nashville, I didn't grow up liking country at all, and I've definitely changed a little bit. Saw my first concert in the off season, Luke Bryan, which was fun. It was a little bit of a trip. I'd never been to a show before, just the boots and the hats and that kind of stuff. But I had a blast, and I really enjoyed it, and it was great. And I think just being in the South, being in Atlanta, I'm starting to enjoy that kind of stuff a lot more.
We're getting traffic like Atlanta here too. Not as bad, but close. We're getting there, unfortunately. Hey, JP mentioned in the intro the mailroom. What were the hours like at that time working in the mailroom?
Yeah, so it wasn't. I basically was trying to intern with any team that I could, and they didn't have anything available in baseball operations. And the Montreal Expos at the time told me, look, if you want, this is a non-paying job. You can help sort out the players' mail, the fan mail. Go into the clubhouse. They gave me a pass. No structure at all. I loved scouting and evaluating. So I'm like, if that's how I get my foot in the door, I'm going to do it. So I did my work during the day, I dealt with the players, and then at night when it was over, I'd go to the stands and try to write scouting reports. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I wrote scouting reports. I sat with the scouts. I talked to them. And eventually, I went down to intern in Florida and got to travel a little bit in the Latin side and just kept getting better. And really, scouting is the part that I love the most. Just to this day, the thing I enjoy about the game the most. But it was definitely a way to get my foot in the door. And I always tell people, just get in any way you can. And then from there, you hope that things get done.
Well, I'm happy you guys used your turning signals all the way to your location because I realized you just got to where you were going. So very good job by your wife of using the –
Impressive.
Yeah, very good job.
Yes.
Everybody was safe.
She's putting her hands over her mouth. She's dying to laugh.
The 10 and the 2. This is great.
Yeah. I'm telling you, listen, Alex, I know.
See the crew?
Oh, there's the
Got
rest.
Kids and everything.
Yeah, there's the rest of the crew.
Nice.
But seriously.
There you go. You got the wife.
Hey, great. Yeah, I know she's not going to be too happy about you putting her on. But seriously though, it's been fun to watch. It's been fun to watch, and it's fun to see what you've done. It's fun to see the culture that they've created. Obviously, like I'm in the middle of Braves country here in Nashville, Tennessee, and you guys are a 3.5-hour drive away, and anybody that needs to go and watch a game, because I'll tell you what, when those lights come off and the bullpen guy comes through, like the visiting team's bullpen guy comes in,
oh yeah,
I'm praying for him because I'm like, dude, you're about to get just crushed all over this field, because I would be so nervous that I wouldn't know if I could throw a strike if I came into that. They turn off the lights, everybody's got the chop going.
It's awesome.
It's special.
Yeah, they call it the iChop, which is pretty cool for the iPhone. It's really cool. When I came, same thing. I remember my first year with the Braves, when they turned off the lights, I was like, what is this? And I was like, whoa, this is incredible to see.
Alex Anthopulous has been our guest. Alex, thank you for the time, man. Enjoy Toronto. Enjoy the snow. I can see it behind you there. And we can't wait for the season to roll back around.
Get you some poutine, too, all right, while you're up there.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot for the time.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
All right, Alex.
Well done, JP. And I can see why you guys get along.
He's
great. Yeah, really cool dude. Coming up, crazy story. I'll say Coppin State, and you're probably like, what? Basketball? Coppin State? There's a blackmail story with Coppin State and their basketball program and a player that is, you've got to hear it to believe it. And it's one side of the story so far, but it is so crazy that we can't wait for the other side in trying to figure out how this blackmail came about and what is a ultimate catfish situation. That's next on OutKick 360.
Yeah, I think because things, transitioned from that regime side to that fundamentalist side. So we also had to change some of our tactics and our procedures and everything else and how we did things to cope with these guys, because they were coming up with some ingenious ways of doing things along the line as well, with some of the IEDs, some of the, the booby trapping the houses, things like that, using the cell phones to call to detonate everything. So it became, I think, as much as you say, more violent in that way, because with the regime guys too, we knew that there was the end state was trying to get Saddam, so that we needed intel as well. We needed to gather that intelligence. There was only so much that was there from previous, just historical data. Then we had to actually make it real intel and workable intel. But with the fundamentalists, if you gave them a chance to vote, and we'd say vote based off, okay, does this guy want to is he going to go along with the capture, or is he wanting to fight? And then let's see who wins. They would rather fight than do anything. There was, so many times guys would detonate suicide vests, because it's like, well, they're not going to take me, clack themselves off, thinking they're killing, other folks around them. But, they just I don't know, they just were different folks, and it was like we had to get more violent in a way, because again, we were going after intel and doing things, and our procedures and everything on the battlefield just had to kind of adjust, just like they were doing.
That's crazy. I truly cannot imagine. And I was in college. I started college in 2010. So I was in high school when things were getting kind of real bad in the 06, 07 era. And I remember people would always talk about do we really need to be fighting these guys? Are they really that bad? And I'm like, this Zarqawi guy's literally chopping people's heads off, right? And don't think it stops there. Like, if this guy could, he'd chop all of our heads off too. Fortunately, they dropped a couple bombs on him, I believe, if I recall correctly. So now I want to get into some comparing and contrasting. What were the big differences between fighting in Iraq versus fighting in Afghanistan? Was it mostly the terrain? Was it the level of the combatant? Like, what were the big takeaways that were different from each other?
I think early on with Afghanistan was, everything was so spread out. Everything was so far in between, and we didn't have many helo assets early in the war, just because of how, basically really having to share them along with the other task force and things like that. And so there was a lot more driving, or you would get flown to an area and then you'd be there for a bit, and then, you're not getting there, you're not getting back to your home base for a while. So you're trying to make do of it and literally just sometimes sitting around doing nothing. But then within Iraq, you had more cities, bigger cities, everything else that we were hitting. Granted, you had Kandahar, you had Kabul, but everything really wasn't happening in those locations. It was farther out because, where the terrorists had their training camps from, years before us ever getting there. But then within Iraq, they could hide right there in the cities. There were, so much, just open roads, everything around. And everything else, at a lot more built up areas, and it was an easier road system to get around. So it made it easier for them as well to move around. The terrain, definitely changed throughout. Iraq, you had your river valleys in a way, and you had the humidity, you had palm groves, everything else, and then you had your rocky mountain areas, dry areas. But then Afghanistan was just so severe with the mountains. I mean, that that's some treacherous terrain in itself.
How's this for a headline? Welcome back, Outkick 360. Former Coppin State basketball player sues assistant coach for sexual assault and blackmail. I'm clicking that. So as you as you read through this, JP, I know you have too. According to the Baltimore Brew, Lucian Brownlee, a former guard who also served as director of player development and director of basketball operations, catfished player Ivan Williams online in a series of messages. Williams believed that he had been speaking with a woman who had romantic interest in him, convincing him to send photos and racy texts to keep her attention. And although the interaction, I'm reading this from Yahoo, although the interaction started off as a romantic connection, the communication from Williams' online interest eventually became toxic. They threatened to release the material, those texts, those photos, those pics, Brett Favre style, I'm sure, that he was sending. And out of fear of losing his scholarship, the player continued to oblige in the request. And the lawsuit is going into that. But Juan Dixon is the head coach at Coppin State. And, of course, he is the Juan Dixon from the NBA and from Maryland, the star at Maryland. He's also named in this. And in the complaint, he's named because his failure to take action in the story, as the story unfolded, it forced Williams to attend practice the very next day and was made public. Craziness with this, where they catfished their own guy and then used the pics to blackmail him into certain things within his scholarship.
That's disgusting. I was reading this.
Now, this is one side.
Oh, okay.
This is one side of it.
Yes. So
let's say that.
You're what is it? You're not guilty. You're innocent until proven guilty.
That's yes.
But reading this is, for a lack of a better word, makes me want to throw up. Like,
yes.
What? Where are we at that this is what's going on?
This is bizarre. I mean, imagine being the assistant who's receiving these pictures of your player.
Yeah.
And then turning them back against, like, it is.
Yeah, and if you don't continue, then I'm going to make this public. But it's like, what sick person?
Yeah. Yeah, this is on the level of Manti Te'o.
Yeah.
Except in this case, if you had the same type of script here, it sounds like a Netflix show. If you had this type of script, you'd have a coach at Notre Dame doing this to Manti Te'o. I need more details on this.
Yeah,
I don't need to see any of the pics. I just need more details.
Yeah, I definitely don't need to see any of the pictures, but I need more details. I also need guys or anybody, not just guys or anybody in general, but stop sending pics.
Yeah.
If
the first one was unsolicited.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, if you're in a position
the catfish didn't ask for it.
Yeah, it's not like it's like again, just stop. Stop sending the pictures, and especially if you don't know who the person is and you haven't met them in person, you haven't had any kind of facial interaction with that person, don't send. Rule of thumb, don't send them pictures of yourself that are the word here that makes me want to kind of gag is, where is it here? Was it salacious?
Oh, yes. Abhorrent and salacious photos?
It's like, stop.
It's suing an assistant basketball coach for manipulating him into sending nudes and sexually suggestive texts, blackmailing him into taping a sexual encounter before leaking all the content when he refused to engage further. There are further details and layers to this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Danny McBride should probably do a show on this now.
Well, yeah, this got to be a show. We have to watch this on Netflix.
What are they doing in Baltimore? Coppin State.
I don't know. Not messing with crabs, that's for sure.
Or they may be.
Yeah.
Who knows? Headlines next when we return on OutKick 360.
Thousands of flights canceled, thousands of people stranded in airports waiting to be rebooked, God knows when with their luggage, God knows where. It's a giant mess, and this isn't the first time, or the second time, or even the third time this has happened in the last year either. It's time for final thoughts. Southwest has canceled over 9,000 flights and counting. 3,000 canceled Monday, 2,600 canceled yesterday, almost 3,000 today, and over 1,500 are already expected to be canceled on Thursday. It's a freaking mess as passengers who already missed Christmas with their loved ones are now hoping to get somewhere, anywhere by 2023. But what is to blame, you ask? Well, it's a tale as old as time. Airlines cancel flights and then blame it on weather, whether or not there's weather or not. Yeah, there was bad weather late last week, but no, you can't continue to blame weather when other airlines are flying to and from those same destinations. I mean, I know some Americans have been conditioned to be rather oblivious in these last few years, but we aren't that stupid. No, there's something else brewing over there at Southwest Airlines, and it stinks. But don't worry, y'all. The former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, is on the case, and he's an angry elf.
Southwest is unable to locate even where their own crews are, let alone their own passengers, let alone baggage. So I conveyed to the CEO our expectation that they are going to go above and beyond to take care of passengers and to address this. They indicated a number of issues that they're having with systems, legacy systems for managing their schedule and where their crews are. But the bottom line is the rest of the aviation system has been on the road to recovery since the worst days of the storm going into Friday of last week. As of today, as I'm looking at the different airlines, most of them are in the low single digits in terms of cancellation rates, averaging about 5% for all of the other airlines. For Southwest right now, we appear to be north of 70%. So their system really has completely melted down. And I've made clear that our department will be holding them accountable for their responsibilities to customers, both to get them through this situation and to make sure that this can't happen again.
Can't happen again? Isn't that what you said the last 4 freaking times this happened? Maybe your rough and tumble talking tos aren't doing the trick there, partner. But boy, wouldn't it be nice if the buffoons of the Biden administration cared as much about passengers stranded in airports and then gouged to get home as they did about forced face diapering in between bites? Yeah, that'd be the day. And no, the airlines themselves are not blameless in this. They've received over $54 billion in COVID bailout money from we the people. And apparently that's not enough to figure out their issues, which are not rocket science, given weather has been a freaking issue for air travel since the beginning of air travel. So what else could all this be? Well, let's not forget the pilot, flight attendant, and ground crew shortages these airlines are still grappling with, thanks to 2 things. Government incentivized unemployment benefit laziness and a COVID vaccine mandate that's still wreaking havoc on flight crews and pilots. Yeah, the friendly skies aren't so damn friendly when your pilot worries about keeling over in the air thanks to myocarditis or other vaccine side effects. This is all a man-made disaster, and yet no entity that contributed to said disaster will be held accountable. No, people will just suck it up, shell out big bucks to make it home one way or another, and then in a couple of months, the same damn thing will happen again, and Pete will go back on TV and vow tough consequences. We the people are tired. We're just tired. But on the bright side for Biden's non-binary nuclear waste czar thingy, there's plenty of ladies' luggage for it to choose from at the airport of they-them's choice. And those are my final thoughts from Nashville. God bless and take care.
Final hour of the Thursday edition. In for Chad Withrow, JP Arencibia, Major League Baseball catcher, broadcaster, fill-in host who's crushing it, friend of Alex Anthopulous, and more.
And fan of the Tennessee Titans over the Dallas Cowboys today.
He's got a little cash riding on the 14 points. Well, we'll see. Thursday Night Football tonight. We'll preview that and every game for week 17. Excuse me. I keep saying week 16 because we're 2 weeks away and we've added the week. We'll preview that in about 20 minutes. Hit some other headlines. Headline here in the States and internationally in sports is Pele. Pele has passed away at the age of 82, dying of cancer. And the Brazilian soccer legend, 3 World Cup victories, the sport's first global icon. You mention his name, literally any sports fan knows who we're talking about, JP.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know that he was a legend, and the biggest thing is legends never die, right? That name will be around forever. I was not a soccer player growing up, not a fan of soccer, but you said you said the word Pele and the name Pele. I knew exactly who you were talking about, and that's a transcending kind of player.
Yeah, amazing ability that goes without saying. Dies of colon cancer and organ failure due to complications with that at the age of 82. He had this photo I saw of him. I believe it was his daughter, and then maybe a grandkid over Christmas on his bed. It was awesome and heartbreaking at the same time, if that makes sense.
I mean, it's been tough. I mean, the sports world in general, obviously, he is a legend and will always be remembered. But also, again, Mike Leach.
Yeah.
There's a lot of this big name, obviously not as big of a name, but people who are transcending in a sense.
No doubt.
Pele, though, he's very transcending.
Coming up, again, we'll preview Week 17, but here's your current NFL playoff picture. And the storylines really for the race for the playoffs in the NFL are in the NFC for the most part. If you start to look at the playoff picture for the AFC, we've got a lot of teams locked in, and you can see those who have clinched. Buffalo Bills, Cincinnati Bengals, and the Kansas City Chiefs. They're leading their divisions. And then you have the Chargers who have already clinched and the Baltimore Ravens who have already clinched their spot. There's really one spot left open for grabs in the AFC because the winner of Jacksonville and Tennessee in 10 days in Week 18 in Jacksonville will determine the AFC South champion. The loser will be out. But you have right now the Miami Dolphins in the final spot, but they need to continue to stack wins. Teddy Bridgewater in for Tua Tagovailoa, and right there on the bubble, same division, Patriots and Jets at 7 and 8. The Patriots currently 3rd in the AFC East, followed by the Jets in 4th, but both of them have their opportunity. And the Steelers, they're still in the mix, but really what the Steelers are up for doing is trying to prevent that losing season, which will tell you the importance of that for Mike Tomlin in a moment. In the NFC, looking at the Philadelphia Eagles, JP, you've got Minnesota in the 2 spot, but San Francisco, that's the team I love in the NFC. I cannot wait to watch them with Brock Purdy or Jimmy G. There's talk that Jimmy G could be coming back for the postseason. They're in the 3 spot right now, and also the Dallas Cowboys. They've clinched last week based on results, and they play in Nashville tonight. They're in a wild card spot, and they're likely on the road. Currently, they're the 5 seed. They would have to lose out to have a possibility of this not being the case. Right now, and by the way, if they win out and Philly loses out, Dallas will win the division. Philly needs one more win to lock everything up. Point being, though, right now, Dallas would be on the road against Tampa Bay or Carolina as the division winner. That's what it'll come down to in the South. And on that side of things, why it's more interesting, Giants, Commanders, Seahawks, Lions in the mix. And then way down the list, but not out of it, the Green Bay Packers. All of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers, he's winning games, and everything's been falling into place for them scenario-wise, where they need to win out. They need the Commanders to lose one game, or they must win out and watch the Giants lose back-to-back games. That would get them into the final spot.
Well, I'll tell you one team that impressed me and that just showed me the resilience when it comes to being a clinched playoff team was the Vikings. That Vikings game against the Colts.
Yes.
Getting your absolute tail whooped. And I'm watching this game. They go to halftime, and I think, well, this game is over. What are you going to tell the guys? And they come back and they win that game. To me, that tells you a lot more about a team than just a win, right? That tells you that these one, these guys are resilient. Two, these guys have absolutely no quit in them. And that, you look at their record, they're 12-3 now. That's a game that you're up and it's easily, you just go, you know what, it is what it is. Today's not our day. When you already know you're in a good position. No, those guys, the dog in them right there, that's something that fires me up. I really have not been a fan ever of the Vikings other than Harrison Smith.
Yeah, the safety.
Because we used to train together in the same spot.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what, that showed me a lot.
Well, they've got a great nucleus around a very average quarterback. And Kirk Cousins, no fault of his own. I mean, he is what he is. But he has so many options now. And with the coaching change that they've made from last year to this year, Kevin O'Connell comes in from the Rams, more of a pass-first mentality. Vikings were going through the run with Dalvin Cook. He's still there. He's still great. But they can lean on him when they need to, matchup-wise. But Justin Jefferson, who could be the first ever 2,000-yard receiver in NFL history.
That dude's on fire.
Nearly 500 yards receiving over his last 3 games. Insane production. He's facing now 2 teams. They've got the Packers, and they're on the road in Chicago. So cold weather matchups, but he's facing 2 defenses that he's already shredded this year earlier with the chance to go for 2,000. He needs to average 122 yards per game over the final 2 weeks here to do it. He would pass Megatron, Calvin Johnson, for the best season ever, which for any receiver yardage-wise was 1,962 yards, I believe. So he was just shy of 2,000, and Megatron did that in 2012. This is not some easy feat. We could see 2 receivers do it. You mentioned earlier with Armando, Tyreek Hill. Hill can also pass Calvin Johnson this year over the final 2 weeks.
Quarterback down, though. That's a tough one.
Yeah, but you're right, though. You mentioned earlier, they'd get theirs.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if it was Bridgewater or, any option at quarterback minus Tua. Tyreek Hill's been putting up monster numbers week in and week out. It's very impressive with what they've done offensively and the threats they have with him and Waddle as a duo. They're the best story, I think, to follow now over the final 2 weeks in the AFC because Tua's down, and can Bridgewater be that guy that can play his way into it? Yeah.
Can he be the bridge to the playoffs?
Can he be someone they can rely on moving forward if you can't count on Tua due to the head injuries, beyond this year?
That's a tough part because you go first-round pick that high, and you expect that's your dude for a while.
Yeah.
And then this goes on, and listen, the head is something not to mess with.
It's scary.
And that's the tough part.
Yeah, and now the league, they have Miami under a microscope with how they handled the first one, which wasn't technically one based on the protocol the NFL had in place. They changed the protocol after he had the second one, which was official. The second one I'm talking about in Cincinnati, where he's knocked out cold.
Yeah.
And that was 4 days after he had one but didn't have one so he didn't have one based on protocol, but it's pretty clear based on the reaction and how he got hit. Yeah, you can
watch him stand up and kind of wobble.
Yeah, there's a reason why UFC fighters, when they get knocked out, they cannot even spar for 90 days.
Yeah.
Like they don't have their license to do so.
Yes.
Training-wise. So Tua is under a microscope not just by his team, but by the league, and rightfully so, based on how this has all gone this season for him. Also under a microscope is Russell Wilson. Awful season. They're sticking with him. They're not benching him. You're seeing, like, for instance, Derek Carr, who's been benched, and he took his ball and went home.
Yeah, he said, I'm going home.
Yeah, because he's going to be inactive anyway. They told him he's going to be active. He's like, all right, peace. I'm out. No need for me to be here.
Pound sand.
Yeah. From the emotional press conference to giving the deuces out the door with 2 weeks to play. Opposite scenario, though, because they can save money with Derek Carr this offseason. The Raiders can. Meanwhile, the Broncos are locked into this deal with Russell Wilson. They're going to have to live with it. They got to pair him up with someone that's going to use him better. And they also have to, keep their fingers crossed that Russell Wilson's going to play better. He said, hey, I wish I would have played better for Nathaniel Hackett. And I'm thinking, man, play better for your team and yourself. This has been awful.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. Have you seen the graph where they're keeping up with his touchdown passes versus the bathrooms in his home?
I'm going to see it.
Yeah, okay. So Russell Wilson is, he's got this 12-bathroom mansion. After throwing one passing touchdown and getting completely outclassed by a quarterback who was cut this season, Russell Wilson has tied the bathrooms. Yes, this is something that someone is actually keeping up with.
Jeez.
As momentous as this occasion is, the bathroomometer, well, it continues until he surpasses that 12-bathroom benchmark where he's trying to have more touchdown passes this season than bathrooms, which should be an easy layup for him, but it's not in Denver. This is an atrocious offense, and, I mean, let's be honest. Do you think he's actually used all 12 bathrooms?
I was actually thinking that when I saw 12 bathrooms, I'm like, how do you actually...
I think a guy would absolutely christen all 12.
You think so?
Yes.
I think there's probably bathrooms in the wings of his house that he's only seen when he walked around.
Sometimes you got to get away, you know?
You really get away. But you know what?
You got to walk a block to get to the other one.
I'll tell you what. I mean, quarterbacks might buy houses now that have less bathrooms, so this bathroomometer can be a little bit of an influence. Like,
or this should be the new quarterback rating.
Yeah.
You have the Russell Wilson bathroom meter, and you can rate the quarterback production based on bathrooms in Wilson's mansion.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Good for him. 12 bathrooms. Impressive, Sierra. So
yes, well done.
He's not doing bad. But here's my question with Russell Wilson. Is it that he is now past his prime and he is no longer great? Was it a not good system for him, and that's why he was not the best version of himself? But they're going to have to figure that out, because I can tell you what, he's got a lot of paper stacks coming to him for the next few years.
Yeah.
And that's going to be tough for the Denver Broncos if he is not the Russell Wilson of the Seahawks.
I mean, I get why Denver did what they did.
Yeah.
They've won their Super Bowls. They had Elway, and they've always been chasing to get back to Elway. So what do? They acquire Peyton Manning, and they win a Super Bowl. And since then, they've been trying to go down that path again, and they're going after Russell Wilson this offseason after Aaron Rodgers said, I'm staying in Green Bay. Literally less than an hour later, this trade is official. And they had Aaron Rodgers, offensive coordinator. He didn't call plays. Matt LaFleur did that in Green Bay, but Nathaniel Hackett was in Green Bay with Rodgers. If Rodgers wanted out, the thought was, and Fisher touched on this yesterday, the thought was, hey, you could pair those two together. It made a lot of sense. The second best option in that scenario is to go, if you're looking the veteran route, is to go get Russell Wilson, who's played in 2 Super Bowls, should have won 2 Super Bowls. But they decide to throw, and Malcolm Butler picks it off in one of the greatest plays in the history of the game.
Yeah.
It's a top 5, top 6 play.
That's the worst play ever.
But he's won 1, should have won 2, and you start looking around going, okay, this could get Denver back. They've already got the defense. They had a good receiving core around him, right? They didn't lose those guys. And a run game that should have improved more than it did, and it has completely gone the opposite direction. Head coach way in over his head, and we knew that from week 1. Week 1, Monday Night Football in Seattle. So the first game, Russell Wilson's back in Seattle. And with the game on the line, Nathaniel Hackett chooses to go for the 64-yard field goal instead of putting Russell Wilson on the field on 4th down to go for it and move the chains forward. In fact, they took a knee that lost 2 yards on the play itself to set up the longer field goal in that situation. Instead of letting Wilson back in the stadium where he last played for 10 years, instead of letting the vet go for it. It was bizarre, and it's been weird since. And Wilson's not blameless here. He's been awful. And I think part of it, too, is he's very fake and phony in how he comes across. I think you can certainly hear that in Seattle. And if you start to hear the rumors about how he had his own office, and
yeah, well, listen,
that's
there's
weird,
a lot of,
man.
There's a lot of people that play the game. They act like they're this person, but in reality, they're not.
Or he wouldn't give. There was one of his former players, teammates, said that he would not give him his phone number.
Yeah, that's tired. For me, it
that's
gets to
odd, though.
It gets to a point, and I've been around guys, and you play with guys. I really don't even have a teammate that I ever felt was like that, but you definitely around guys that I played that you're like, you're so full of garbage. Like you act one way, and this is how you act, but the reality is you're nowhere near that, and it's that stuff is frustrating because then you lose respect for that person as a player, and then they struggle, and it's not that you cheer it on, but they struggle, and it doesn't really bother you. But But I'll tell you what, I will say this. I don't know how front offices make decisions for who they hire. But I wish that they would talk to players, or at least get a little bit more.
I think they talk to some, but
get
yeah.
more information, because here's the thing: there's guys that I've been around that have been managers in the major leagues, and managers, and you talk to, we all talk, right? All athletes talk, hockey, NBA, NFL, and you're like, oh, we knew this guy was going to stink, and it's like, how do we have that? And you go through a thorough process to get interviewed,
yeah,
and you still make a decision that is so bad that it can turn your franchise to literal junk.
You can
like this.
really set yourself back.
And it's like, I just don't get how they make some of these decisions when they have all the opportunities to investigate.
12 bathrooms, best, greatest home, most impressive penthouse, whatever you want to say, throughout your major league career, throughout your life. JP Arencibia, best, most disgusting yet impressive and envious home you've ever stepped into was where?
Well, it's not envious because it was an apartment. It was a penthouse. So AJ Burnett,
okay,
he had a penthouse in Toronto. I forgot what the building was called. It was the 3 stories.
Okay,
it had a glass elevator that would go through the middle of this condo. First off, the door opened up, which I think any penthouse. The door opens up to the condo, right? Like you're not coming off the elevator and like, oh, who's in 2404 and who's 2406. It's like, this is my place. Welcome.
It's the front door of a home.
Yeah.
In a condominium.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was enormous. I don't remember how many rooms, and I don't remember the square footage. It had the patio. Might as well been a full-on like basketball court on the top of this building. You overlooked the CN Tower, the baseball stadium. I mean, it was insane. And I think he was paying, I want to say it was over $50,000 a month for rent. So that tells you what kind of house he was, or what kind of penthouse.
Kind of tells me also the kind of parties that were there. You're paying $50,000 a month. You're throwing parties there. That is the pad.
Yeah. That was a good spot for events.
Like a chef, they have a chef on every level, like 3 kitchens.
I don't know if they had a chef on every level, but I guarantee you they had bottles of alcohol on every level, and plenty of games to play. And I mean, listen, there's hot tubs on the top. I mean, it was insane. And he had his wife there. It was family. I mean, but that was, when I got there, I was like, this is the big leagues. Like the little condo that I'm staying in. Not the big leagues. 3-story penthouse, mucho big leagues.
So, most out of place I've ever felt was this mansion in Scottsdale at Silverleaf.
Great golf course.
Oh, amazing! And a great couple. Like they sell the. I won't name them, but they sell the wire. The company they started. They sell the wire that goes into the AT&T fiber 5G stuff that they're bearing now.
So
right?
they're not hurting.
No, and they have cornered the market on that.
Okay.
So I go in, right, and we go there for dinner because we have a mutual friend that allowed me to go with them. 3 gates to get to the home. You have to go through three guarded gates, 3 of them. That's the first thing. And you're going up this hill. Howie Long lives up there on this hill. 3 piano rooms, okay?
Jeez.
10 bathrooms, I believe. So it wasn't 12. It wasn't Russell Wilson quality here. But they had 2 mega rooms for their dogs. The dogs had a doggy door outside with their own patio that was field turf, okay? Infinity pool that goes into another infinity pool that then overlooks Silverleaf. A mini golf course, putt right beneath the infinity pool. The most.
Do you know what it was worth?
No, I could look it up. It's insane. And 2 guest homes that connect to the actual house. It was everything that you would want but don't need. That's how I would describe this. And it was two of the most generous couple I've ever come across. And if you met them, and they've actually hung out here with us at 6th and Peabody. If you met them, you have no clue that this is their home. But it is incredible. Their favorite room was just this a trophy room where the guy played football, and it was the size of a normal walk-in closet. That's where he had his computer. And then entire home.
I thought you were going to say his favorite room is like his wine cave that he has. Just
the wine cellar was
finest.
awesome.
Yeah.
The theater was incredible. It took us like an hour and a half to take the tour.
I'm glad you guys got a tour though. That at least if you go into a house like that.
I was asking him in some of the rooms, "Hey, when was the last time you stepped foot in here?" And he couldn't remember. He's like, "Oh, it's been over a year."
That's what's funny. You remember Doug Drabeck, the pitcher?
Yes.
Cy Young with the Pittsburgh Pirates. His son was my teammate, and he said that they used to call through intercom to talk, to have conversations, because he had it looked like Richie Rich. He showed me an overhead picture of the house, and I was like, how did you guys even talk? He's like, honestly, we would intercom each other to have conversations, and that's how you know the house is too big. It's no longer like, by the way, every time I hear your name, Jonathan, I feel like I'm in trouble, because that's what that's what JP, Jonathan. But it used to be like, there's no more like, hey, Jonathan, pick up your room. It's like, paging Jonathan.
Yeah, it's like calling downstairs now is what kids are doing, right?
There
on their
is,
cell
Dougie
phone.
Fresh.
Yeah, there he is for the Pirates. Now we're all waiting, by the way, JP, for Clay to build his new home. Then we can compare greatest home we've ever stepped foot into.
Hey, that's your stories. Your stories pretty
again
elaborate. So.
Way out of place, and I was just trying to sneak around, even though I was invited in the door. It's one of those deals.
3 gates? I wonder what the three gates is about.
Well, to get into the actual golf complex,
so
right? And then you have to go up the hill. You go up the hill to the next level, and you go through another gate. And these are great homes, right? But I wonder what those homeowners feel like, knowing that they have the home of their dreams. But up on the hill, you got to go through another gate to get to your neighbors.
I tell me if I'm wrong, and this is just me. I feel like if I could have all the money to buy a house like that, I still wouldn't get a house then.
Oh, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't want that.
I don't think that. I think that I'd rather have like a cool outdoor area.
Yeah.
I'd rather have sick bar, like man room, smokes the finest cigars,
pool house.
Yeah. I'd rather have more of that than to live and have like a monstrosity of a house. I'd rather have the putting green. I'd rather have that stuff than have the actual structure of a house.
I would rather have land.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, let the dog run.
Yeah.
You know?
He doesn't need to have a private patio. Go run. Like, hang out. But that's it.
We're going to the Super Bowl. I'm hoping to swing by there. I'm going to call them up and see if we can swing by there.
Well,
you want to go?
Guys, you need.
We're going to crash there.
Well, you guys
don't even know we're there.
Yeah, ask my wife. But
okay.
If you guys go out there, can you guys have a OutKick version of Cribs?
I'm sure we can.
That would be big time.
I'm sure we can.
Yeah.
As long as they'll give us the tour.
No, they don't have to give you the full tour. Just even just like the outside, and then
here's the drive up.
Yeah.
That's the tour.
Yeah.
Going through the 3 security guards.
Square feet, 30,000. Yeah.
Oh, insane, man. And Russell Wilson, 12 bathrooms, and I guarantee you he's used all of them. Coming up, one big thing on every NFL game, and I'm going to get JP Arencibia, Vol for life. His thoughts on the Orange Bowl, Tennessee and Clemson, which kicks off tomorrow. All of that more straight ahead on OutKick 360.
Welcome into the latest edition of the Trey Wallace podcast. I am Trey Wallace, happy to be joined by Saturday Down South national columnist, correspondent, you name it. He does everything. Connor O'Gara, what's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing well, man. It's nice to do a little home and home with you. Had you on the Saturday Down South podcast last week, be able to come on your show this week. I feel like there's like a million things that we can talk about as we get into bowl season. So yeah, man, I guess because I went in like 12 different directions with you. So it's only fitting that we probably do the same with me.
No, man, it happens. And we're getting into the crazy part of bowl season, kind of like, the mid-majors are out of the way. Now we're starting to get some of the bigger games that folks can get excited about towards the future. starting on like Friday, and you get a nice matchup Friday night with Tennessee, Clemson, a couple other matchups scattered, throughout the day, then getting into Saturday. If we're looking outside of Ohio State and Georgia and TCU, Michigan, are there 2 or 3 games that stand out to you? They're like, okay, these have little implications towards maybe the 2023 season.
How about South Carolina, Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl? Really interested to see the way that this plays out for Spencer Rattler, somebody who has just had a season that I don't know if there's a recent comp to it where, and man, after those first 10 games, everybody who was low on Spencer Rattler was like, see, this is why this was never going to work. What a horrible decision. South Carolina kind of wasted a year with all these great skill players, a lot of Marcus Satterfield hate. And now, just like that, after the 2 games that Spencer Rattler had, he's got a chance to do something very unique. And I wonder how that impacts his NFL draft status. I wonder if he is deciding based on how he performs in this game and the feedback that he gets, if he's coming back for another year. Shane Beamer would love to be able to move past sort of the awkwardness of these last few weeks with Marshawn Lloyd, Jaheim Bell entering the transfer portal. So I've got a lot of attention on that game. And then obviously against the Notre Dame team that's had a very herky-jerky year in itself for year one of the Marcus Freeman era. So looking forward to that. And then a game that I'm going to be at right after I come back from the Peach Bowl will be the ReliaQuest Bowl, which I still want to call the Outback Bowl because come on, let's
the Outback Bowl.
It's still the Outback Bowl. Like let's be real. But yeah, seeing the way that Zach Arnett responds to a very atypical situation. I think it was Ross Dellinger who said this is the first time that a sitting head coach has died while active since like Randy Walker 2006. I mean, this is very strange to see this set of circumstances. Fortunately for Zach Arnett, a few weeks to be able to prepare. We know that he had full autonomy on that side of the ball on defense. So you would hope that Mississippi State with a veteran quarterback and Will Rogers is going to be ready to go. I don't think they're losing that football game. I just don't. I'm kind of amazed that the spread is only Mississippi State -1, seeing as how Illinois is not going to be playing with Chase Brown, who's kind of the heart and soul of that offense. So I'm really looking forward to being able to see the way that Mississippi State responds. But yeah, there's intrigue. You want to get into Kentucky and Iowa, the rock fight that could happen there.
Are they going to get the 31 points? Like, that's the biggest thing that stands out to me. Will they hit it?
How's that, dude? How's that over under not in the 20s? It's going to be bad, but I'm looking forward to it. That's got the Sickos committee written all over it.
It's one of those games where, and I put it in a column that I had written this week. It's like, okay, what are you getting out of the offenses? You have no idea. Are you going to get something out of Kentucky running game? Okay, well, that's going to be interesting and hard to find out.
Glad you're with us across the OutKick network. If you're listening on this great radio partner, we appreciate you. 6 states and growing on the OutKick radio network and streaming live at OutKick.com. You can see all the shows there. Clay, Tommy, us, Trey Wallace podcast, and it's so much more. Hookstead's podcast is great, and I'll leave a ton of people out, but we've got plenty of content.
Dakich.
Oh, Dockich, yeah.
Oh,
Dockich.
did I say it wrong?
A lot of people say Dockich. It is Dan Dockich.
Dockich.
And I shouldn't have left Dan out because Dan is going to be here Monday. A lot of, if you're lucky, a lot of you will have Monday off because you're celebrating New Year's Day on the 2nd, right? But we're going to have a show because that's a massive sports reaction day with the college football playoff, Orange Bowl, and more. So we've got that. And we'll also be going into the Week 18, and all of the playoff scenarios will be right there in front of us for all the positioning for the wild card spots. And that all continues starting tonight. It is time for one big thing on every NFL game for Week 17. And Thursday Night Football is where we get going. 11-4, the Dallas Cowboys. The Titans are 7-8. And Josh Dobbs is starting. His first career start in the NFL. His first start since starting for the Tennessee Volunteers. Takes place at Nissan Stadium for the Tennessee Titans against Dallas. I'll give JP my thoughts on this game a bit later. Cardinals and Falcons, somehow, DeAndre Hopkins played 71 snaps this past week for the Cardinals. He had one target in Week 16. Desmond Ridder for the Falcons, he hasn't thrown an interception in 2 starts. He also has not thrown a touchdown in 2 starts as they continue to evaluate their draft pick. Titans have given the boot, it seems, to Malik Willis over the final 2 weeks, starting Josh Dobbs, for instance, tonight. Bears and Lions. The Chicago Bears have never lost 9 games in a row. JP, the streak right now, they have lost 7 in a row with 2 weeks to play. So they are well on their way to losing 9 in a row. The Houston Texans continue to play well. Maybe not winning every game where they're playing well down the stretch, but they have Jacksonville this week. And Chicago's right behind them looking for the number 1 overall pick. Too little, too late, probably, for the number 1 overall pick.
Do you think the number 1 overall pick this year is that big? Is that going to be that much of a game changer?
For Houston, yes, because they'll have their selection of Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. And compared to last year, far better options.
Well, they have that Lewis quarterback out of Kentucky hire.
Oh,
which is crazy to me.
And if they go with Will Levis, number 1 overall,
the guy that eats the bananas.
Yeah, and is very average with his production.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, I don't get it, and no one we've had on gets it.
I'd take Bryce Young 1-1.
Yes,
I would.
Somehow the draftniks out there are saying that he's the top quarterback prospect in the draft. I don't see it. Jared Goff, by the way, for Detroit, 12 touchdown passes. No interceptions in the last 7 games for Detroit. They lost last week, though, to Carolina in a game they needed to get in order to, I think, stay in that wild card race. They're still mathematically there, but that was a big loss for them. Jags and Texans mentioned the 2 12-1 now Houston Texans after their win over the Tennessee Titans. Jags are 7-8. It's also meaningless for them. Regardless of what happens, same as Tennessee, Week 18 is the win-and-in scenario. And it sounds like Doug Peterson's going to play his starters. The Titans aren't playing their starters tonight. Starters, started the season as backups, many of them. But Derrick Henry's not going to play. They put Ryan Tannehill and others, Bud Dupree, on injured reserve. It sounds like Trevor Lawrence is going to play.
Are you on Trevor Lawrence? Are you sold? Because I watched him on that comeback game.
I think he's in sync with Peterson. I think it's a great pairing.
Do you think? And so you think he's a dude finally? He's a guy that looks like the hype.
It's tough to crack the top AFC quarterbacks right now. He is right there. He's right there on that line.
I saw
the bar.
I seen him made some throws this season that I'm like, holy smokes.
Yeah, he started slow, but he started with Urban Meyer, then had the interim, and now he's got Peterson, who I think has been great for him behind the scenes. Yes, I'm in on Trevor Lawrence.
All right.
And I think he's hitting that. He's right below the prime, right? You've got Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert. And then there's Trevor Lawrence, who could be that next quarterback right there in the playoffs.
He's been looking much better.
Agreed. Broncos and Chiefs. Broncos have been awful. Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes never looked better. Kelsey, 6th in the league at tight end. He's 6th in the league in receiving yards. And he's, of course, number 1 for tight ends. He's got over 1,200 yards receiving. Second at tight end is T.J. Hawkinson for the Vikings by way of Detroit at 839. It's not even close, the biggest producer at the position. Dolphins, Patriots. The Dolphins have lost 4 in a row now, but they can still make the playoffs by winning their final 2 games. They've got the Jets and the Patriots. Patriots, Jets in that order, actually. And Teddy Bridgewater is now at the reins. Patriots have 50 sacks on the season, most in the league, and over half of them are from Judon and Uche. They're getting half of it from 2 guys who have been extremely dominant.
You know what's funny, though? The Dolphins have always played the Patriots well. Even when the Patriots were winning, they were always like the thorn in their side. So hopefully that's the case for the Dolphins this week. And they're going up to New England, which I would imagine it's going to be a little warmer in Miami than it is in New England. So I always think that's also a tougher thing to adjust to. I don't know if you feel like weather plays a big part.
Yes, it does this time of year.
But this point, I mean, we talked to Armando earlier, the Buffalo Bills. No one wants to go into Buffalo to play in that kind of cold weather.
And Miami lost the game, but I thought they played well in Buffalo a couple weeks ago, despite the conditions. I thought they showed they can go on the road and play that game. The question is, are they going to be able to do it consecutive weeks if they have to go through Kansas City and Buffalo, for instance? Maybe Cincy. Colts and Giants. Giants are 8-6-1. The problem is they're 2-5-1 in their last 8 games. And the good news for them, Nick Foles is still playing for Indianapolis this week for whatever reason. Awful. Panthers, Buccaneers, winning for the 4th time in 6 games. The Panthers, 570 offensive yards last week against Detroit. That's a franchise record. Also a franchise record, rushing yards. This is an organization that has Christian McCaffrey. They set a franchise record with Deontay Foreman and company, where over their first 12 carries of the game last week, they had 150-plus yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Impressive. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers, same 1 game better, actually. They're 7-8. Panthers are 6-9. Tom Brady's lowest yards per attempt average in 20 years. It's happening right now before our eyes. And he's also thrown 6 interceptions over his last 3 games. Multiple interceptions, 3 games. First time in 20 years he's done that too.
Can't count him out though. He's the one guy. He's the one guy that until it's a full season of it to where you can go, okay, maybe this is. I can never count him out because he's like the Undertaker. It's like
he gets back up, man. And I saw him play his final game in Foxborough, 2019, which was 2019-2020 playoffs. And the wild card round there, when the Titans beat them, I thought he had lost it. And then the next year he goes to Tampa and wins the Super Bowl.
That's the thing.
Yeah, it was a completely different player. Yeah, which is why I don't think he's done now, as bad as he's playing. Browns and Commanders. Rookie first-round pick, Jahan Dotson for the Commanders. He had 14 catches through his first 12 games. He was also banged up through some of those games. 15 catches, 3 touchdowns over his last 3 games. So he's past the rookie wall, and he's performing well. He leads the Commanders with 7 touchdown receptions, and he can tie the franchise record with 1 more. Saints and Eagles. The Eagles need just 1 win to clinch the NFC's #1 overall spot. Philadelphia, though, 7 turnovers combined over the last 2 games, and they had 4 against the Cowboys. It took the Cowboys 4 to beat them by 6.
What about Jalen Hurts? How amazing has he?
He'd be an MVP if he didn't get hurt. He hurt his shoulder.
I'm just saying, like, for me, that's when you talk about transcending quarterbacks and how somebody can make a difference. He was a guy that no one really thought.
It was a prove-it year for him.
Yeah.
But they've invested in pieces around, and they bring in A.J. Brown, who has 80 catches for like 1,300 yards.
Where did A.J. Brown come from?
I don't remember. I don't remember what he and his agent did in the magic trick they pulled off with the Tennessee Titans. Yeah. And they've paired him. You mentioned Miami. They've paired him with Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
And they already could run it well, and Hurts has been very efficient. They're making sure he's healthy for the postseason. And they played well with Gardner Minshew a week ago anyway. 49ers Raiders, Mr. Irrelevant was Brock Purdy. He has been unbelievable considering the options and the quarterbacks they've gone through within Kyle Shanahan's offense. They're running their offense with Shanahan, with Brock Purdy, who was the final pick of the NFL draft out of Iowa State. And now he's becoming more of a household name and an underdog story people were rooting on and rooting for and latching onto with the bus, all aboard.
Yeah.
Well, all aboard the bus.
It's like Minshew. They had
Minshew in very similar fashion.
He had that at some point.
Rams, Chargers, Justin Herbert, no touchdown passes and 3 interceptions his last 2 games, but the Chargers have clinched their spot. A couple of others. Jets, Seahawks. Back to Mike White for the New York Jets. Robert Saleh's defense, incredible. And it's back to Mike White now, who's finally been cleared to return by the medical staff in New York. They need him because Zach Wilson isn't the guy. They're moving on from him. In fact, he's inactive. He's the third-string dude. It's really no different than the way they're treating Derek Carr in Vegas.
It's when you start to think about stories, and one of the things that I look at is with the Jets, Mike White, talking about him, and drama. We talked about the Broncos earlier.
Yeah.
How about the old Wilson saga? That's been pretty special to see.
He was 5-2. Wilson missed the first month of the season, then came back. He was 5-2, and Robert Saleh made the quarterback change with their starting quarterback having a record of 5-2 because they had to admit they were not going to make the playoffs or do what they could accomplish with a great defense with him as the starting quarterback. They couldn't score. They haven't allowed more than 22 points since they've allowed it one time. They've allowed more than 22 points one time since week 3. That's how good they've been. They're losing.
It tells me, though, they're losing. Culture, we talk about this in any sport.
Yeah,
that's a big deal. And when they took him out and he said that he said he didn't feel bad for anything. What was his comment?
No, I think the question was, did you feel like your play and the offense's play today that you held back a great defensive performance, that you let your defense down, you let your team down?
Oh, yeah, he said no.
No.
And that's for me. And then when Mike White was starting and they all had the shirts that were for Mike White,
yep,
that told me everything I had to know about that clubhouse.
Yep.
That there's something going on in there.
You could see it. You could see it. Mike White was out, so Wilson was back in. They take him out. Strevler comes in, and you could see the team playing harder for that guy. There was an energy to it.
It's not a good.
He lost the locker room with that.
Oh, not a good situation.
You can't be the quarterback and have that type of reaction behind the scenes. Steelers, Ravens, Sunday Night Football. With or without Lamar Jackson, they've got to find further production within that Baltimore offense. No one's talking about them doing anything in the postseason. Meanwhile, mentioned this earlier with Pittsburgh, mathematically they're not eliminated. That's incredible when you consider they started the season 2-6. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season, and currently they're 7-8 after starting 2-6. Kenny Pickett hasn't been great, but they're winning tight ball games right now, and you can see this young group, getting better and coming together. And if Mike Tomlin pulls this off again, where he somehow finishes a game above 500, or can work in a tie where he can be 8-1, wow. And Baltimore's for the taking here. They flex this game to Sunday Night Football. Meanwhile, JP's Vikings, Packers. Packers need to win out in order to try to keep playoff hopes alive. Minnesota's at 12-3. They are 11-0 in one-score games, including the 33 greatest comeback we've ever seen, outscoring Indy 36-3 in the second half to force overtime, and then kicking a field goal to win by 3.
I turned off the TV and I thought, man, Jeff Saturday is a genius. Like, look at what he's doing against the Vikings.
How dare you count him out?
And then, I turned it back on, watch a field goal, lose the game, and I'm thinking, no flipping way. That's why you always have to watch the games, though.
Well, or follow Twitter. Twitter will tell us.
Yeah, well, that is true.
I flipped it off, too, and I was like, what's the score? Oh, I'm turning this back on. They got the ball back.
Yeah.
They've scored 14. They have the ball back in the third quarter. Okay, I'm in. Bills-Bengals, Monday Night Football. Cream of the crop here when it comes to Week 17. 12-3 against 11-4. Joe Burrow, 14 touchdown passes. Let me rephrase that. He had a couple more. 16 touchdown passes in his last 6 games now. He's been on fire. So is Dawson Knox in Buffalo. A touchdown catch in 3 straight games. Josh Allen, he's had several multi-interception games, 5 of them. 5 2-interception games this year, at least 2 picks. Got to clean it up, or Cincinnati is going to get them. Bengals are a home dog. Little preview tomorrow for my outright underdog winners. Money line.
Oh, yeah?
Bengals get a point. I mean, technically they're the underdog. It may be an even push by the time we get to kickoff, but hey, I'm leaning Cincinnati. Cincinnati is my favorite team right now.
Well, Burrow's a stud, and he's a dog
Love it,
too.
man.
Watching him
Yes.
in LSU, that guy's got winning blood in him. Like he just
Easy to follow
knows what he knows what he. I do love Josh Allen as well. I think Josh Allen is a guy that his athleticism is so fun to watch.
We had this yesterday. Look at the quarterback, the young quarterbacks, 27 or younger in the AFC playoffs versus how the quarterbacks were acquired in the NFC and the trades that were made and when they were drafted. It's yin and the yang. It's weird. By far, the stars at the position are in the AFC right now, and they're about to get paid and locked up long term if they're not already. Coming up, we will get JP's thoughts on the Orange Bowl. And, I mean, do you want to do final thoughts when we come back? You want to look at that camera and get final thoughts?
Sure. Let me get final thoughts.
We will do that. We will get you into tonight's Thursday Night Football matchup where JP and I are going head-to-head with the bets we're making. One of us will win.
Titans.
One of us will not. And we'll tell you why I think I'm right and why he's not. That's next on OutKick 360.
Yeah, I think because things, transitioned from that regime side to that fundamentalist side. So we also had to change some of our tactics and our procedures and everything else and how we did things to cope with these guys, because they were coming up with some ingenious ways of doing things along the line as well, with some of the IEDs, some of the, the booby trapping the houses, things like that, using the cell phones to call to detonate everything. So it became, I think, as much as you say, more violent in that way, because with the regime guys too, we knew that there was the end state was trying to get Saddam, so that we needed intel as well. We needed to gather that intelligence. There was only so much that was there from previous, just historical data. Then we had to actually make it real intel and workable intel. But with the fundamentalists, if you gave them a chance to vote, and we'd say vote based off, okay, does this guy want to is he going to go along with the capture, or is he wanting to fight? And then let's see who wins. They would rather fight than do anything. There was, so many times guys would detonate suicide vests because it's like, well, they're not going to take me, clack themselves off, thinking they're killing, other folks around them. But, they just, I don't know, they just were different folks. And it was like we had to get more violent in a way, because again, we were going after intel and doing things, and our procedures and everything on the battlefield just had to kind of adjust, just like they were doing.
That's crazy. I truly cannot imagine. And I was in college. I started college in 2010. So I was in high school when things were getting kind of real bad in the 06, 07 era. And I remember people would always talk about do we really need to be fighting these guys? Are they really that bad? And I'm like, this Zarqawi guy's literally chopping people's heads off, right? And don't think it stops there. Like, if this guy could, he'd chop all of our heads off too. Fortunately, they dropped a couple bombs on him, I believe, if I recall correctly. So now I want to get into some comparing and contrasting. What were the big differences between fighting in Iraq versus fighting in Afghanistan? Was it mostly the terrain? Was it the level of the combatant? Like, what were the big takeaways that were different from each other?
I think early on with Afghanistan was, everything was so spread out. Everything was so far in between, and we didn't have many helo assets early in the war, just because of how, basically really having to share them along with the other task force and things like that. And so there was a lot more driving, or you would get flown to an area and then you'd be there for a bit, and then, oh, you're not getting there, you're not getting back to your home base for a while. So you're trying to make do of it and literally just sometimes sitting around doing nothing. But then within Iraq, you had more cities, bigger cities, everything else that we were hitting. I mean, granted, you had Kandahar, you had Kabul, but everything really wasn't happening in those locations. It was farther out because, where the terrorists had their training camps from, years before us ever getting there. But then within Iraq, they could hide right there in the cities. There were, so much, just open roads, everything around. And everything else, a lot more built up areas, and it was an easier road system to get around. So it made it easier for them as well to move around. The terrain, definitely changed throughout. Iraq, you had your river valleys in a way, and you had the humidity, you had palm groves, everything else, and then you had your rocky mountain areas, dry areas. But then Afghanistan was just so severe with the mountains. I mean, that that's some treacherous terrain in itself.
JP, Arencibia, wrapping up what's been a great show. He's been the great guest host today. Hope you've enjoyed it.
It's been fun.
I know you haven't enjoyed my. It sounds like I'm really hating on Tennessee sports in general. I also don't think the Vols are winning tomorrow.
You got it twice today. You guys are just hitting me right in the feels.
I mean,
stop.
I won't mind to see them win, but Clemson to me is going to get them, and it's a win-win scenario for Heupel.
Oh no, he's
the
already,
fact that they're in this game,
100%.
It's and not without Hendon Hooker. With Hendon Hooker, they'd be in the playoff.
Yeah,
Joe Milton just doesn't. I just don't trust him.
Yeah, he's got a phenomenal arm, but you can throw an orange however many yards you want. You can throw the ball as hard as you want. You got to hit him in the hands or in the chest and let them have an opportunity to make a catch. And I haven't seen him do that very well.
Yeah, we're going to watch this game tomorrow, and we're still not going to know exactly if he's the guy next year or not. Nico's there practicing and going through the motions, but I think they're hopeful that Milton can start the season as that guy. He's no Hendon Hooker, though. Josh Dobbs could also do some damage in this offense, and you think he's going to do damage tonight against the Cowboys. Why?
Well, because it is a home cooking for him. He's feeling good. He wants to show what he can still do. He's an astronaut. The guy is a genius. He's going to go out there and terrorize the Cowboys defense, and the turf is wet. So, advantage.
Yeah, huge advantage. Huge advantage for the undersized offensive linemen who are going to be slipping all over the place against Micah Parsons.
Their heart. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the heart in the dog.
Sometimes it just comes down to dudes. And right now the Cowboys have the talent. The Titans don't. And if they do, the best players are sidelined tonight. Enjoy the game. Back at it tomorrow.